thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, fun to have you here.
This is the walking me through here. It's with so much what I'm doing on the real estate side with the gyms now. Everything I look at is a giant square or a giant rectangle. This is like a ton of little mini rectangles connected to some medium-sized squares, and then some even thinner rectangles. And you're like, part of this is actually just an alleyway that's probably not even up to code. And
just probably if the New York City permit is watching, it's legal. It's up to code. It's fine. Nothing to see here, officer.
Nothing to see here. But it's incredible what you've done with this space. Anytime you do want to set up something in a huge, an MSA metropolitan area, you have to get really creative in here. But I mean, but the character, like you can't get like these fucking. I'll get video of this stuff later. But like, there's just so much character in here. If this was a vanilla storefront rectangle next to a Whole Foods, it would still have character because it's still Mark Fisher Fitness. Yeah. And that's where, when I discovered your brand and we first connected, I've never seen so much just really, and not even like manufactured. We went to a a branding campaign, and they told us how to talk really cool, just how much just authentic your brand was. And it was just different. It was very much, it was whether you look at different brands like Liquid Death with the water, Motley Crue with their music, just loud purple cows. Yep. When you started it, were you afraid to lean into that much more? Again, it's a very flamboyant, gay kind of vibe. Were you afraid to lean into that?
Yeah, honestly, I think yes and no. I remember very distinctly that around the time when I was moving from just doing personal training, like, okay, I'm gonna do this a little more seriously. The little bit of the backstory was I had 10 years work as a professional actor. I had moderate success, but then I got a commercial, and commercials are actual, like, a lot of my residual income. So I did a national Allstate commercial. I was like, oh shit, I think I'm a
is that on YouTube?
TV film actor.
Will I be able to clip that in?
100%. It's an Allstate commercial, and literally all I do is I get in the accent with Mr. Mayhem, and I'm like, and I literally,
Mr. Mayhem?
Yeah, I've been in Mr. Mayhem commercial.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. It's fucking incredible.
And like that first year alone, I made $30,000. That first year alone, I was like, what the fuck? So I marched my agent's office and I was like, guess what, guys? I'm no longer a theater actor now. I'm a TV film actor. And I had been just a complete addict on fitness. Everything, training, fitness. I wasn't explicitly paying attention to the business of fitness because you might remember in the late 2000 aughts, it wasn't really like a thing, right? But I was modeling, right? I was every T Nation person during the Hey Nation of T Nation. So I was watching the way people were putting together their sales copy, and I was subscribed to people's like emails. I was reading their blogs. And then I kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do TV film, and that's going to be the move. And then if I'm in the city more, I could put a little bit more effort because that had been a constraint previously in having a quote unquote real business, right? And I had done very well with personal training, a lot of clients, but it was like weird because I worked as an actor. So every 6 weeks I was like, well, I'm going to Lancaster, do musical. So
and when you're doing PT, you go into their homes or just random gyms that you're just paying for?
There is a gym in Midtown called Mid-City Gym.
They let you pay as a 1099?
Yeah, I paid like $500 a month, and it was a really gnarly place. They're on 42nd Street now, but it was the oldest consecutively running gym in America when I was there. They used to hold like pregame for like Night of the Champions there, so it was like an old school bodybuilder, gnarly, wonderfully dirty place. Very also out of character that I'm there with like my Broadway people, like with my fucking FMS kid. Everyone's like, who the fuck is this guy, right? So all that to say, to get back to your question, what happened was then I started being like, okay, well, let me put some effort into this. And the original concept I had, which wound up very much evolving from, was like, what if it's like couture fitness? And also like, I remember I was like taking a coffee with a guy from a creative company I was working with that was doing some filming and videos. And I was like, ridiculous human, serious fitness. So a lot of the brand has really always been me being like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we do this, right? So the first round of pictures were like me with like old school barbell guys, like a carnival barker, and me like the handlebar mustache, right? And me like with a megaphone and like a bunch of like Broadway chorus girls like on my leg, like looking up at the camera, or me, like, there's a bunch of weird ones with me, like, hugging a Twinkie. I was like, I want to do Fight Club, but with a Twinkie. So it's going to be me, like, all greased up. Shredded. And then we're, like, holding each other, like, getting hugs. And, like, it was just so strange. And when I first started making the first couple of videos I did, and this was, 2010, a different world, very expensive, a lot of work, renting a Mid-City Gym, all-night shoots. Like now, everything's so fast and dirty. That was That was not the case then, children. And I remember after I first put it up, having this moment before I was going to send it out to people that, in my corner of the industry, like the Great Cooks, the Charlie Weingroffs, the people I knew like a little bit, but they were like super serious. And I was like, this goes my career. And the calculus at that time was, Mike Boyle is probably not going to buy my services. I don't think Mike Boyle's going to hire me.
Probably not going to job.
Yeah, which is like hilarious now. As a lot of those guys have become very good friends and colleagues since then. But at that time, I was like a trainer, went to perform better. Like I'd like cross my arms, try not to move my face too much so people don't know what's going on with this guy.
Trying to get fitness to be taken so seriously at that point. The Grey Cooks and the Boyles and all this, and then you come around looking silly as fuck.
Yeah,
it probably maybe like, dude, we're just trying to get respected over here. I'm trying, And
I gotta say this to the credit of everyone. I completely underestimated how open they would be to that. But that was the butt quivering moment where like I knew I was making the right call. I always say a real advantage I had was I was like just old enough to be like, fuck it. I've never made more than 40 grand a year. Who the fuck cares? Burn it all down. Like I'm young enough still. It's fine. I don't care. Right. And then ultimately they were so cool. Like I remember Great Cook that after the first performance was like, this guy, cause he didn't even really know me. I think someone else in FMS showed it to me. And I remember being in the bathroom peeing. Great Cook's like, humor is highly correlated with intelligence. And I'm like peeing. I'm like, oh my God, Great Cook says I'm smart. So they were so, Dan John was another one. Dan John I met very early on.
Yeah.
And he was like, what you're doing is cool. So he was another person from and I think I would have been okay regardless, but I have to say that was the thing, one, that I was scared of. And the two, in practice, a lot of that sort of, elder class of the serious fitness people really affirmed what I was doing. And I think that I would have been okay regardless, but that was a very important thing at that time. That was like very nice to hear, like, okay, cool. I can maybe do this and not like have all my mentors think like this guy's a fucking wahoo, which I am, but.
I had presented a small group thing, I think it was last year, and I put the homepage of 8 different brands. And yours was, I think, like number 6. So left to right. And everyone just kind of looking at him. And it was, they all look the same. It's some 34-year-old female lean. I mean, it's not even stock photography, but it's so common. It looks like stock photography. And then there's yours. And everyone was like, what the fuck is that? Yeah. And I'm like, where does your eye go instantly? It instantly goes to this thing that stands out from the crowd. Now, you can't just be silly with your branding without then also embodying the entire culture. And I mean, it's so funny. We're walking around here and we're up in your office and there's fucking dicks drawn everywhere. I mean, like the culture here is literally, it matches. It's not a facade for client acquisition. Now talk to me about because again, you're I got to imagine a lot of this became like, this is like the manifestation of all the clients that you've ever worked with that are far more extroverted than you. They're just like this explode. I just kind of picture some of your clients are just kind of like this very loud, fun, vibrant, colorful explosion. And that's kind of like what this entire place looks like. Like everyone who's been here has kind of left a little bit of their DNA in the brand and the experience.
Yeah, I think that's true, and it's been interesting too over the years because other thing is, we're coming from our 13th year, right? So the brand has evolved. Like I've evolved as a person. Like some of the shit we did in the beginning, like first of all, we would not be able to get away with in today's world.
What?
I mean, just like crazy things, like people actually teaching class like naked, like just like crazy, like parties in the clubhouse, like things like we really swung for it the first year or so, which looms large. I think anyone that was around that time still looms large.
It's like memory. Lure, like people who are like ever in a fraternity or whatever to hear stories of way back when.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that like in like the mythos of the first 6 months where we really went for it. I mean, we were having fun. We were having a lot of fun. But yeah, certainly the brand has changed over time. And I think that the people that have gravitated this place, I think you're correct. I mean, in many ways, even things like the unicorn, right? Like people are always like, oh, how did the unicorn happen? It's like, well, first of all, they chose us, number one. Number two, in practice, it came out of just a weird Facebook thread, right? So like I say a lot of like weird shit per minute, right? So like I'm probably talking about like Vikings and pterodactyls, whatever the fuck. But periodically I would say things and it would be obvious like, oh, this captured their attention, right? And in fact, when Mark Fisher Fitness, before he had a space, the summer of 2011, when I was not certain that I wanted to do this as a real thing, because even at that time, I was like, I don't know if I want to deal taxes or a team or like real estate. I was like, I see a good path here for me to like make a couple $100K take summers into Europe, work as an actor. I don't know if I want to work that hard. And my business partner, who's been my best friend since we were like kids, like since high school, just kind of slowly grinded me down over several weeks because some of his friends in New York were doing it. And he was like getting the newsletters and watching what's happening. He was like, all right, I think there's a thing here. And I remember he came in to one of the classes, just like watch and just like take notes, because at this point, very much he was the business guy and I was the trainer guy. I was reading about business, but he has like actual masters, though admittedly in arts administration and nonprofits. So anyway, he's like writing down his things and like we did this full day like planning meeting, right? Because again, like, his nonprofit background, I'm an actor, like, well, if we have a business, well, the first thing we have to get clear on is what is our mission and our values, right? So we're doing all that shit. And he presented a lot of what was like the embryonic version of the brand. And it was a lot of shit from him watching me teach that I didn't know I was saying, right? Because and to this day too, when I speak, oftentimes like it's like in tongues. It's
you
like
have markisms.
I'm just like, nah. And again, a lot of them probably suck, but periodically they hit. And the ninja thing, right? So we call our clients ninjas. And that was because people start, I guess in class, I'd be like, you are crushing this, you are fucking ninjas. And then they started writing emails and they'd sign like, great class tonight, Mark, Ninja Kelly Jean, right? And then Michael, particularly because he was a step removed at that time,
and
did a really great job. My business partner, started to codify and like look at these things. He had a list of all these like sayings. I was like, whoa, those are cool sayings. He's like, dude, like these are all things you say. I was like, oh. So I think Michael and I both, certainly much of it, particularly in the beginning, of course, came out of like me and my personality and things I would say. But I think we've always tried to pay careful attention to what captures the attention of the community and then find ways to institutionalize it, right? And that can look like a lot of things from like literally it goes in the style guide. There's like, there's brand requirements around how that's used. It goes into the Notion, into the manual, it goes into the onboarding. And that's an art too, right? And I think that's been both an opportunity challenge over the years is you also want to feel authentic, right? So we've also had this like, make MFF weird again, really since 2012, right? This constant sort of pull and push because not everybody that works here is out of their mind, So to some extent, we have to leverage at any given moment. There's 25 to 30 of us that are just fucking depraved. And we have to just you met a couple of them upstairs. We push as hard as we can. And then everyone else, I'm like, I don't know, just bring a lunchbox. You got a He-Man lunchbox? Just that's true. Bring a He-Man lunchbox and bring in stars and give people gold stars, right? So that has been an art too to help people. If we literally have a customer service standard that is warm, weird, and wonderful, well, weird doesn't necessarily have to be, putting on improvisational avant-garde performance art, like improvised opera. It can just be like, just be informal, right?
Yeah.
And I think authentic and informal is much better than like weird, but like, you didn't quite get it, and that's a very specific issue for us because that's the challenge of this kind of brand, as you might imagine, is making it feel organic and making it feel weird. I think we've done a good job, but we're not perfect. And certainly we periodically have to like a little course correcting. And usually that's like an individual that they really want to show up and I would joke, it's like they're jumping off the cliff, that gets to the end of the class and they're like, I'm going to say something weird. They're like, and then at the end of the class, we're going to have an orgy. And you're just like, no. They just like don't get to the end of the cliff. And you're like, no. And like, meanwhile, I was doing a whole set on Bukkake, but I got away with it because it was so over the top that, if everyone's moms were there, I'd be saying the same thing. And it would also be, my particular like move was also a little bit professorial and a little bit nurturing and motherly in a way that sort of let me get away with it. And not everyone else has let do that.
Yeah, it's like watching a stand-up comedian who can run with jokes. You're like, wow, like how are you able to hit that? It's funny, with Pride Month, every business, it just, you walk in and it's like, this isn't, you throw a flag over your, the hostess stand at a restaurant or whatever that is. You're like, God, such an, it's so artificial. It just it just makes me want to just, it's like, and you walk in here and, there's not pride flags thrown around everywhere or things like that. The thing about this that again, going back to, because these facilities, they have, the rent is so high, right? You can't pay to redo all the things you just have to run with it and make it work. And as I walked around here, I feel like you've done such an incredible job of that. And I've got to imagine as the business grew, you showed me the one room you started in and you expanded. As it expanded, you had like a couple trainers or you had those clients that had been with you forever. how much of their input shaped like that sophomore several years of the brand, and how much of it was just your own? Because I've had stories and conversations where the founders like, I've got this vision and we just kind of followed that, and I didn't always, let the inmates run the asylum, or I didn't always listen to the peanut gallery. Others tell me I honestly have never had a good idea that they didn't come up with first. For you, what was it?
I think it was about half and half. I think I have contributed, but it's always been very collaborative. I mean, certainly, particularly again in the beginning and the way the organization shaped over time. So for some more context, Michael hasn't been involved operationally in like years, right? And even I myself am not that involved.
We walked into a room here you've never even fucking been in.
Yeah. Fair. So, but in the beginning, very much the way it worked for the first couple of years is stupidly, I was the words, Michael was the pictures. That's the way it worked. Michael had an amazing taste, amazing design, amazing eye. He did all like a lot of the graphic design, a lot of like the design part of the brand, and I did all the words. I did the word piece. And I've continued, I think, to have a lot of ownership of the word piece. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I can't say I've ever had like a master plan from day one. It's all sort of been like, I don't know, what if we name it the Enchanted Ninja Clubhouse of Glory and Dream? Even now, it's like a brand named after me. Like the whole thing was just like, I don't know, just like making it up. Like our exit strategy is like, we're going to like light them all on fire. Like when we're done, we're just going to light all buildings on fire. And we're like, we're done. That's how we leave. So I can't say I had a really strong vision. I think the thing that I've had a strong vision for, and even this, I think at this point, there's other people that frankly are the on the ground stewards, because I'm just not here that much. It was really like, I feel like this is so pretentious to say, but I think it's like the values. Like what are we standing for? And importantly, if these are the values that this place stands for, what does that mean for how the team interacts, right? Because a lot of my attention, although I love the clients, I haven't been doing client-facing work since after the first few years. So the thing that I'm most interested in, I think, maybe about running a small business is you get to create the city you want to live in. And to me, that was the thing I was interested in, was how do we test a theory of, okay, if this is how we show up as humans, and this is how we like are sharpening saws for each other in the places like we're still a little like broken, how can we, in the service of something that's bigger than us, ideally become better humans, right? Because I very much believe you can be an awesome human and not be like a very good leader. But I think if you want to be like a very good leader, it's very hard to not have to like work on shit. And like, I'm down. I'm down to work on the shit, right? So, the greatest gift of this place has been the many hard things I've had to hear, and the many things that were very hard for me to say over the past 12 years.
Can you give I'm sure if you knew all the numbers at the top of your head, that'd be incredible. What talk to me about the come up from 13 years from when you started, from like a revenue standpoint as you grew, and to kind of where you sit today?
Yeah. So, we're definitely smaller post-COVID, at least in this facility. But yeah, it was like Looney Tunes. The first year we did $1 million. And the second year we did $2 million. And the year after that we did $3 million. And the year after that we did $4 million. Like in one facility, right? Like one facility. So
that was that small version that I saw. The first one?
It was this. We had this space as well. But even so, I have to think $4 million has to be some kind of record for 4,000 square feet.
Within 4 years? Yeah.
That's got to be.
Yeah.
So since then we floated down. I think on average that was probably unsustainable. We'll float between like 2 and 3. I think is probably sustainable for us, which is like still not nothing for a single facility. But the first like few years, that was like running a mile in 90 seconds. That was like a really Looney Tune thing. So, but we were just shot out of the cannon, and as you might imagine, that we incurred a certain amount of operational cost and brain drain for me, because particularly the original version of the business, part of what made it magical was not sustainable, right? And part of what made it ultimately very, very difficult for me as a leader was there were so many feelings. And I was part of it too. There were so many feelings. And that original crew, that original cast of characters, to this day are still mostly best friends, even though people have moved away, right? So there was definitely like a 3-year period where everyone was taking turns marrying each other. And every time somebody got married over a couple of months, we'd basically have to close the joint down because the whole team was going to the marriage. And the first few years particularly, we hung out nonstop all the time. So
is that, looking back at that, was that cause more problems, or is that leading to higher success or faster success?
I think it was both. I think it led to faster success, and it led to a lot of things that were very hard to fix. There were a lot because there was a lot of entrenched things, a lot of feelings. There were a lot of, the metaphor I always use about this when I talk about like leadership stuff is the thing that's hard is in the beginning, you don't know what you're going to do. And even if you've got chops and even if you read a lot of books, I mean, at least for me, you're going to make mistakes, right? And particularly if it's like a particularly emotional crew, and this is definitely, and of late, I think things have softened now in a way that have been professionalized that, I would say it's a much easier job for me to have now because like everyone knows the thing, everyone's adults. If we have a feeling, we talk about the thing. In the beginning, people just didn't know any better. It took us a long time to figure out how to, onboard people, to set expectations. It took us years to train everybody on how to have difficult conversations and how to not talk shit behind the back. If you have the thing, say it, feel the thing to my face, right? Like, because otherwise I can't change the thing. And I think in retrospect, there were a lot of things that happened the first few years. There were beefs that people had that never got healed properly in the way that the last, let's say maybe 7 years, they always do, right? Because if a thing happens now, we've just got so good at drilling, like you have to have the chat. If you have the feelings.
This is an HR. This is like
this is HR. This is internally, which for me, so again, as much as I love the work we do here and I'm driven by the clients, this has been a large enough organization really since early on that my attention, my efforts, my care was on the team. So money aside, my feeling of like, are people okay? Do they feel taken care of, right? And certainly a lot of my own journey has been, understanding how to discern, okay, I understand you're very upset with me. Like, this is actually your baggage. I am going to take this handbag. This is great feedback. This is mine. Your feelings are valid and I can't hold on to this, right? And in the beginning, I was just like terrible at that. I was too much the effect of, and to be fair, I also messed up many things. There were very fair criticisms of me. I'm sure there still are, right? I'm certainly not making it sound like I've got this all figured out. But for me, that was the thing that made, even though we were very successful those years, they were very, very heavy moments for me. And again, I'll say to the credit of everybody involved, to their defense, I also had to just toughen up, right? Like my tolerance for interpersonal discomfort among the team was low and my expectations were not rational. And I think, frankly, business books are bullshit. And they did me a lot of damage because every time you read a business book, it's always like, oh, everything is fucking great at Zappos and we have a library and everybody hangs out all the time and it's amazing. And then like the tell-alls come out like 3 years later, 5 years later, but I didn't really know that. I never had a job before. I was an actor. So I was like, can't this be like utopia? Why can't everyone be happy all the time? And these are all things that, many people listening are likely like, oh, that's obviously you idiot. But for me, I just didn't. I had such a high bar and such high aspirations for a place that was going to leave everyone psycho-spiritually turned on all the time. And like, that's just like not life. And also like, that's not my responsibility, like
it's not the burden of what
that's
is.
Yeah, that's not my thing. And it took me a while to understand that. So it's interesting because for me, the emotional tenor of my experience has improved so drastically. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm taking a lot of credit for it, but I guess like I kind of have to, because I don't think it's actually the people. Right? Like, I don't think it's like, oh, I used to have a bunch of like really unreasonable, unruly. It's like, no, I had people that I didn't know how to set expectations with. And then I would be overly sensitive. And now, I'm past 100 employees at this point, right? So it's just like, it's not paint by numbers. It's always different. And right now there's probably some unhappy email waiting for me in my inbox right now. But that has allowed me to enjoy my job much more.
So a lot of people are listening to this, and most of the small business gym owners that are, let's say they're doing under $1 million a year, most of their issues when they hear what you're saying, they're like, oh, I agree. I don't really have that with my staff, though. I have that more with the members and the customers, right? And number one, the thing that keeps, I think, most of these gyms from ever surpassing, even getting to $1 million or even some decent number, is generally the lack of investment in staff. Like, I would rather you have the drama issues with a larger team and show me you've invested. I'm very much retention over the staff, over the customer. There's going to be lots of customers. How many great general managers are going to come work for you in this idea? Like the numbers,
100%.
yes, correct. But with that, the drama and the feedback that you get on the HR side, this is one of the things I've talked about, like a single unit, even a couple corporately owned unit owner, he's never fully incubated. Like, how many people, how many of them would have to get on a flight to Maui for a wedding of a client here and the plane goes down and you're like, fuck, I guess I'm coaching class on Monday at 5 a.m. Like, what is the incubation? Like, how many staff members can we have in front of us that keeps the owner in the position that you're doing that, and right now you got 100 employees, right?
Well, we've had 100 employees over the years, not currently.
What's the current size of the staff now?
The current size of staff, so here's everything that's interesting too, right? Because again, candidly, our revenues are down, our margins are up like a lot.
What do you like better? Higher revenue, lower margin?
Higher margin all day long, every day. Now, is that a head fucky for me thing sometimes? Like, yeah, for sure. But like, that's a head fuck like I'm willing to take, because also my life has more complexity, right? So, to speak to the current version of the staff, I think at our height, we had as many as, I want to say we had like 30 staff between full-time and like half part-time. So I'm not talking like somebody doing a shift per week. I'm talking like 20 showers. Like it was a lot, and it was probably too many. And I think, again, that's no fault of anybody who was here. That's all on me. And the thing that has become obvious to me, and I think anybody that does this, is you always want less people paid more. You want less people paid more money. Because at current, I think, we've got, I want to say, I should know this, but I don't know. I think we've got 5 full-time trainers. We've got maybe 4 or 5 part-time trainers. And for the business staff, I think we've got 4 like full-time, and then I think like 1 or 2 like independent contractors that are beefy.
So I mean, if there was a perfect storm, 2 full-timers are going to move. They got jobs somewhere else. Someone else got married and they're leaving. Like if you got, 5 resignations in the quarter in 45 days, like, well, fuck, we got to hire quick, or my ass is going to be picking up some slack somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And certainly, while that's not impossible, what is true is the advantage of this kind of gym, right? This could be an interesting thread to pull on, because there are disadvantages of this level of size. Namely, you don't scale this, right? Like there's kind of 2 models in the business for people who've done really well. Let's call it the 1 to 5 million mark. Nobody seems to be able to like bounce past that mark. Most people obviously can't bounce past like 2 million. But in practice, what that looks like is you either have one behemoth gym like this that you try to do second location of and you can't because it's just too complicated, it's too special, it's too whatever. Or you copy paste these like, I don't want to say baby facilities, but these like 300K, 500K, maybe one of them does 1 million facilities that are leaner footprint, leaner staff. That gets more copy pastable, but seems to run into some of the same challenges of scale once they're in like the 5 to 8 ballpark, right? So everybody kind of butts up at the same place. The thing, however, about both that like mini-me model or the giant monster behemoth like this is, unlike, let's say, a classic gym that's like you're doing 300, 500K per year, it's very hard to get much insulation. So right now, if we had a lot of the staff leave, I'm still not going to be doing that much more than I'm doing. But part of that is because I have a strong general manager in place, and MFF also has, although she's on leave, a very strong sales director, and I also have a very strong full-time fitness director. So like I'm relatively removed if things happen. Like I know that they've got that. But in practice, for most brick and mortar owners, I think the best that a lot of them are looking for is what I often call like the sous chef. Right, sure. You get like your 1 GM, and you give them enough of a salary, enough of a comp structure, such that you're able to actually take vacation sometimes. And then part of that is with the smaller ones, you'll have to do that for them, right? If they want to go on vacation, you have to be willing to unplug the toilet, because it's not fair to have the non-owner always be the person with it on it. So at any rate, that's sort of the way we are structured right now. And I'll tell you, our expansion plans for Mark Fisher Fitness, so this leaves aside the franchise, which I could also talk about too if that's of interest, for MFF will likely be smaller footprint facilities, right? Because this particular thing doesn't scale, but I can centralize things like finance, things like marketing. I can get some economies of scale, and then I can get, particularly in New York City's real estate environment, which is less grotesque than other parts of the country, oddly, if I can get 1,500 square feet, 1,800 square feet, for under 8K, which here is not unreasonable.
Say New York people think everyone's like, oh, you can't find anything. It was like, no. Don't think you understand what happened during COVID.
Yeah,
There's actually a good amount of inventory available.
Yeah, it's really gnarly, which certainly we discussed before we turned the camera on. I was able to leverage with my landlords, who I have amazing things to say about, because I certainly probably could have been more of an intense person. I'm not a pirate, but I was able to leverage that, and I appreciate they were able to, because it literally, like, we're in the middle of the lease. I was like, I want to pay several $1,000s less, and I'm going to give you this back because I need to get my lease down by I need to shave $7,000 off my lease. Can we just do that?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay.
I mean, they probably owned other buildings that they were tenantless completely. Well,
that's
zeros on.
That's a thing too. Yeah, because we got a good relationship, because they got fucked by a lot of their tenants.
Yeah.
And And listen, they're also good guys. I can see when they're negotiating with me and they're like using negotiation tactics, but they do it in an upfront way. Like COVID hit and I can't remember exactly what happened. Basically, I was like, hey, Chris, can you help me out? And he was like, you know what? Don't pay rent. Don't pay rent. You guys are getting fucked. I got it. We'll figure it out. Don't pay rent. Yeah. Right. And then I got the money for the PPP and I was like, Chris, I'm going to give you just a bunch of money. I know you're getting fucked right now. Here, have this like fucking 25 grand.
If you can have one great relationship that's not within your own business, it's with your landlord. 100%.
It's so great. And they've been, again, they're negotiating and like I've also had to learn, they're like Greek. I don't want to say Greek mafia. They're not mafia, please. But they're great. They're salty New Yorkers. Which again, like I'm kind of okay with too. And I think that's the next thing because I foresee for next year. And the years to come, I'm likely like really, really probably stepping back from this place. Just have other ventures that require my focus. Teaching, the team how to deal with vendors has been of late a lot. Things like, vendors are not like at MFF where we all have these shared sets of values. And if Alex writes something down,
chance you can get, and here's how to know if they're fucking.
And many of them are, there's varying levels of like competence, right? So when you're dealing with a vendor, so internally we have this wonderful, we just can dependability, right? It's like if Alex writes something down, he says he's going to happen, I'm not thinking about it ever again. It's done. Most humans and most vendors doesn't work like that. Like you have to own the follow-up. You have to be on top of them, and you also learn their thing. Like, so like occasionally my landlord would just like send me like a mean text about something like, Chris, shut the fuck up. I'll take care of it. Like, but yeah, he's like, I love him. He's not my dad, but he's like I love him.
When you were breaking out, talking about the different staff that you have here, there was one department and I got to see it upstairs. I walked upstairs and so talk to me about, because you said, my business team, I'm doing about 4 or 5 people up there.
Yeah.
Very few gym, like a gym owner traditionally is the first thing they're going to do is I'm going to hire the coach. So I don't have to do 5 a.m. It's like,
yep.
That doesn't indirectly make money. That delivers the service that people pay for. But I would probably recommend investing in a cash flow type employee, someone who can help make new money.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the business team you have up there and what those roles and functions are and how soon into did you have someone that just like full-time lead call, follow-ups, CRM, fucking,
yeah. Almost embarrassing to admit, probably like 2020.
Okay.
Like when I tell you, we just got by on being so.
When you're this unique, you also don't have to market. Like
we were
the Geek Squad guy. Yeah. The founder. He's like, marketing is an expense for unremarkable brands.
Yeah, we were violently good at fulfillment, like violently good, and because of that, it was the whole thing. We're like, I hope we get around to signing up these memberships. These people are emails. They want to sign up. I hope we get to it today. Maybe we won't even be able to get back to them. I always want to reiterate, this is totally on me. I don't want to ever sound like I'm talking smack on former employees because everybody wanted to do a good job and I just didn't know what that was at that time. And in fact, if we go back to the bigger version of MFF, when I tell you, we probably had like 11 or 12 non-revenue generating employees. We had like a full-time finance manager, we had, and I'll get what job we didn't have? Sales. We did have for a while, I think I'll say this to our defense, I think in 2016, 2017, one of our founding trainers who was ready to do some other things. It's another challenge of this industry too. You're usually not gonna have a trainer who's gonna be here for 10 years. So if you want a 20, 30 year run, you better figure out how you do that turnover. And this is an individual we love. We're still very, very close with him. And he also was amazing at sales, but didn't have it as an official thing. So for a while he was doing it, but he also was still on the floor, I think 20, 25 hours, because he was so valuable as a trainer. He was just like a heart of this place. And then when he transitioned out, it was very clear, like, okay, we need to get more thoughtful about marketing and sales, because the place where obviously that really was a challenge for us was we had a second location on the Lower East Side for a while that just never really got traction because like I just didn't know at the time how to do ground game, right? I didn't know how to beat the streets. Like everybody just kind of came and they showed up and we gave them memberships. And when you're in a new market, that's not going to fly, right? Which is part of why when COVID happened, we kind of used it, I don't know if it's like an excuse, but like kind of like I knew that location was going to be distraction and wasn't going to be as profitable as we wanted. And there's also some things specific to the New York real estate market as it happens. Unfortunately, it's the lowest income generating zip code south of way uptown. So there are a number of things that didn't work in that particular facility. But chief among them was I did not understand how to make it rain the way I do now, right? What's happened now is, so we still have 4 full-time back of house staff, but notably 2 of them are full-time sales individuals that, there's a base involved, but obviously a lot of the pay is from commission, so that means we've got a GM and then essentially 1 other individual that supports our GM. Now we do have a full-ish time independent contractor that's sort of full-time, but not like for legally a full-time person. And for a gym of our size now, now that starts to make sense. So like anybody home doing the math, you start to work back and be like, oh, I bet that is a very different situation financially than where you're at when you had, the cast of thousands and payroll like out the wazoo. Because, we all know cash is revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. And that's been true in my experience.
Talk to me, share what you can on something like that on the commission structure. Like whenever I'm creating a new comp plan and someone wants someone who's sales driven, base salary, and I always tell them, gets 40% of their comp base and figure out what living expenses, someone in your market has, right? Yep. Like that rent, the car note, whatever it is, things that they can breathe. Yeah. And then they can dive all in on going and just absolutely crushing it. And the nice thing, what's the cost of a membership?
It depends on which one they do. Average blended in person right now between small group and classes is $314 per month.
Okay, $314. Now, do you guys go contracts month to month?
We have most 12-month agreements, but we do have a cancel at any time.
Got it. So even with, let's say $300, that's a $3,600 a year contract type scenario. You're able to do solid commissions off that. Now, when I did Globo Gym, the commission structure was such dog shit because at $40 a month, the economy, it just doesn't scale out.
Right.
But there's volume. So this person had to be in front of fucking 50, 60, 70 people a month. Yep. That's not the case here necessarily.
Yeah, very different sales
model. What would you say new client acquisition per month on average is?
Again, blended, which is tough, right? Because of course you have all the laydown referrals and then you have the actual wow, we're really hustling with digital marketing, which has been not easy in this market of late. But crudely, we're looking at like $350, $400 cost of acquisition.
So in a given month, how many new net clients are coming? How many new clients are coming in per month?
Anywhere from 20 to 40.
20, 40. And that's extremely reasonable. Like the days of like this idea of like 50 new members in a month or 60 or 70, there's less people, more money. Right? Like you're saying, like change your idea of like what it is to make money in this thing. Yeah. It's not about having more people. More people is just so much more complicated. And the stress that you put on that foundation, most of them it's made of balsa wood. It's not going to withhold that tensile strength test. On the commission structure though, for these guys, what does that look like? So if they're selling someone on a membership that is worth at least $3,600 a year, do you guys pay them based on the total price of the package? Do you pay them on the upfront cash that's upfront on that first month payment? How does that work?
Yeah, basically. So they're paid out as a bigger percentage of the first billing payment. Okay. And notably, we do it's X sessions per week for X per week. Sure. Asterisk. Billed every 4 months, 4 weeks, right? 4 weeks, Which is my preferred way of doing that. I know there's different ways of doing that.
The math works out.
Yeah. So basically we wait until after the second payment goes through until they're past the 30-day money back guarantee. And then they get a percentage of that first month. If it is the 12 month, they obviously get a much bigger percentage. If it's a cancel anytime, less so. We sort of assume cancel anytime, you're here at least for 8 weeks, but maybe it's going to be 12. Our assumption is those people are not going to be super sticky. But yeah, it's interesting your point about the stick rate, because that's one thing that's interesting too. The other version of MFF had just massive membership sales. I wouldn't say like massive terminations, but first of all, there were more people here, number one. But number two, the retention was a lot lower because in the old world, we had a 3-month and a 12-month membership. And I don't think we clocked how many people were really coming in and coming out. So our retention, it wasn't bad, but it was like 5 to 7%. Well, if you had 800 members, like that's a lot, right? That's going to be a lot just to stay where you are. Whereas now there's frankly less new people coming in, but the retention now is much, much better, right? And part of it is because we have leveraged a variation of what is often referred to as the decoy pricing, which you're familiar with, which basically means on the price sheet, you give them 3, make it obvious that this is like the one you should do. And I wouldn't say the canceling time is strictly an anchor, but it is priced such that in most situations, it's not going to make sense to do the cancel anytime. So we mostly only sell 12 months. I understand why the industry writ large seems to be moving towards cancel anytime. I certainly get the argument of it, right? It's a much easier sale to make if people aren't committing, but we have preferred the stability of getting people into the 12 month. And again, they have the cancel anytime if they want to do it. They're going to pay a premium for it.
Sure. And that's where, I still push for the average small business owner to do a 30-day cancellation notice. And I'll get like, what about but Netflix doesn't, this doesn't, I'm like, SaaS is a different thing, right? And it's what when I first got started in this industry, it'd be ROR, rate of replacement. So at a Globo gym I worked at, where I had 7 dedicated salespeople, we had a $15,000 a month marketing budget. Our rate of replacement, if someone canceled at Monday at 1 p.m., I know by Tuesday at 1 p.m., we've replaced them plus 5.
Right.
The average small business gym does not have that. You need that 30-day runway, especially if you're going to listen to Mark me about invest in staff. Because if you're paying on the 8th and the 23rd, the fucking 1st and the 15th, you need that 30 days to make sure, okay, I got to figure my shit out. I've got 30 days to replace this cash coming in because there's people that are relying on it. I can't just have a drop off. And every gym's had that dramatic avalanche of cancellations, drama, people moving, someone fucks someone else, whatever it may be. And you're like, holy shit, we just set a PR in the most amount of cancellations in a month. You can't weather that storm if it's instantaneous. I love the contracts. My only issue on contracts, and I tell people do it, is make sure you get, if it doesn't get fulfilled, you have great financial repercussions for that. But at volume, with the amount of people you probably had at, your 4 million mark, did you ever partner with a collections agency?
We looked into it. It just, my recollection of that time was we looked into it and it just felt weird. It felt like it just didn't make sense for us. It was just more trouble than it was worth for us. Overall, we've occasionally had people ghost us. It actually hasn't been that much. And for the most part, again, we're not pirates. We get on the phone with people. The team is allowed, I should say, or empowered to use their discretion if for some reason either something's really going on in your life or you've been paying us for 6 months and haven't been here at all. So we're just going to keep the billing cycle just went through. We're going to keep that and we're going to let that be. Or I think they pay termination fee. I think it's $350. The one that I like most, I think, is Ferris, which I think is the fairest way to do it, but just feels, at least for us, just a logistical leap that just more trouble than unfortunately it's worth for us is, calculating back, okay, had you had a cancel at any time,
what's the delta?
What's the delta? That feels, anybody who have an issue with that feels like we have no problem there. The termination fee, of course, you also have to be prepared for. And I think this is part of in the maturing of this business, which is unicorns and rainbow and Disney, the person that's dear sirs and madams, right? Is so deeply offended. I cannot believe you did this. You said you were about people, but really you're about Mark's gold throne. So here you are, Mark. Here's your dirty money. I know what this place really is, and I'm going to tell everyone. And you're like, and now I'm like, okay. It's okay. But doing it long enough, I'm like, I understand you're upset, but we did make it clear up front,
A business without any bad Google reviews is actually sus. I don't want.
Weirdly, that's an issue for us, because I've read there's a lot of research if you have no bad Google reviews, and unfortunately right now we're at 5.0 at 219. So I'm like, can someone leave me and every once in a while the person, they still give us the 5 stars though, but I'd like the person that's the real G that they're and here's what I don't like about it. Yeah. Sort of the Dan Kennedy damaging admission. Yeah. Well, the thing about it is,
you have a contract price and a month-to-month price. Let's say the month-to-month is $300, contract is $250. And the way I always positioned it was, it's a contractless contract, or it's a contract you can cancel anytime. So you tell me you're going to be here for 12 months, you get $250. Yeah. You quit at month 6 though, that's perfectly fine. You just got to pay back the discount I afforded you for those previous 6 months. And now my ACV for that person is right back to my month-to-month rate.
100%.
And to them, to the customer, in my experience, it's always been, oh, that makes sense. I told you I'd be here, so you're going to give me a discount. But if I'm not, I just got to pay back what I would have owed you anyway. No issues. No need for a collections agency. 100%. It's so funny, man. Back in the day with collections agencies, it was if you had enough, if you were churning 1,000 drafts a month, you probably could get a rate around, they would take 30%. Anything under that, they were going to take 60 or 70% of what they collected. So what I would do is in cancellations, and this before I was smart enough with MindBody to go all ACH, we would just, if someone ghosted us on payments, I'd be like, hey, listen, we always hate doing this. I'm not sure if you've been receiving these or not, but if you get an email from the collections agency, just know that is due to this past bill. We didn't have a collections agency, but they just hear that because most of our clients were like, just out of college, they knew they wanted to buy a house. They didn't want to have their fucking credit fucked with. So they would just hear the word collections agency and we'd finally amazingly get an email back. Okay, yeah, you can draft my card. Here's the new card, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it was just the thought of it helped. Now, talk to me about when you segued into, like, obviously doing this and everyone that's come through here, guaranteed there's a lot of really incredible business men and women who have come through. And they look at you like, God damn, man, like, fuck it. When did you decide to get into the B2B of the business for unicorns?
Yeah, so...
Because I think you had just watched it when we did our first podcast.
We first started, that was when we, like, I would say we really started taking it seriously about like 18 months ago. And then probably when we had our first podcast was like, incrementally taking more serious than we had previously, right? So, MFF doing these crazy numbers, right? We're on the Inc. 500. We're getting covered in like men's health, women's health, entrepreneur, details, like GQ, we actually weren't in GQ, but we were in other places, right? So people hear about us, and even for that, it's sort of purple cow. People are like, what the hell? So what happens is that then I start getting invited to speak, and I had a career as a professional actor. I don't not know what I'm talking about, so I think I'm pretty proficient at holding people's attention, entertaining them, giving them content, and also
speaking now.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, that's I feel like just like
that's my thing. Like that's the only place my life makes sense is when there's hundreds of people looking at me. Is like that is my ultimate flow state. That's my favorite place in the world. And particularly when I'm making them like laugh and I'm teaching them something and giving them hopefully something actionable. So anyway, I was on the speaking circuit. So I started doing, and I've done like most of like the route, right? The fitness industry conferences. And of course people, that is traditionally, essentially lead generation, right? Because usually, I've done some fancy corporate gigs. If you're doing like a real big corporate gig, they can definitely pay. But most of the industry conferences, you're not getting paid tons of money. So you're usually doing as lead gen.
Most guys have to pay to do it.
Yep. So I remember hearing around this time, this was like 2015, maybe it started 2016. John Berardi, I remember hearing that,
Precision Nutrition.
Yeah, that John Berardi did a bunch of talks before he had anything really to sell people. He was just like, I'm just going to like talk to people. And like, I think he had like some things to sell, but he was very intentional about like, I'm just going to like hang out for a couple years. And very much even at the time I was like, I just want to give value for a while. I want to get to know people. I want to understand what their problems are. And I want to do that first before I even start to try to like charge anybody.
Create a product or a service.
Yeah, and then even when we started the Unicorn Site, our coaching group, it was very much like what would be called penetration pricing. I think it was like $400 a month for like whatever, for like everything basically. So we technically started doing it around 2016, 2017. But like I said, I don't think first of all, at the time, we also were doing not industry specific. And half the clientele were ninjas, right? And we developed like a weird base of people like in the New York City real estate scene. I was teaching them about time management. And then my business partner, Michael, who now has a master's in organizational psychology from Columbia and is getting his doctorate in leadership and change management, he was doing really fancy corporate gigs sometimes with Fall in Our Laps, these big fat consulting things with retainers. And it was great. And that's also not really how you run a business, right? And I think with that business, we needed a while to, okay, like what are we doing here? Michael is super bright.
He's ridiculous.
Super bright. And Michael loves a big, thorny, knotty problem. And I think, and I'll tell you, we don't do a lot of it, but we still do like a little bit of like secret weapon Michael stuff or that sort of bigger fat consulting retainer kind of thing. Because his brain does well with that. I wouldn't say that he is... Yeah, I'll say this. He's under challenged by the challenges of running a gym because the businesses are not complicated. You and I know.
Yes.
Love to all of you. It's not complicated. There's only so many ways you're going to grow it. There's only so many marketing strategies. The sales script's only going to look so many ways. There's only so many pricing, number of people for whatever. There's not that much to learn. It'll take you a few years, but if you're all in, you'll learn it. Bigger organizations, of course, have a very different levels of complexity. For me, I'm not particularly interested in that. I'm like, I don't really know that world. This is my lane. This is my thing. Michael is very interested in that, right? So I think there was tension there. Not a bad one, but we were just figuring out, well, what do we want to do here? Like, Michael, are you going to do this? Or are you going to like lose your mind if we're just doing brick and mortar training gym owners? Which for me, with the marketer hat on, I'm like, we got to pick a lane, man. It's got to be like the one thing. We do this thing. And now it's like, if you go to like the coaching group page, it's hilarious. It's like, here's the 17 criteria and please don't schedule a call if you don't meet them. And then you get on the phone, you're like, no, this is not for you. You're amazing. And because also like, I'm not the guy. Like if you're a personal trainer, trying to go from 5 clients to 15, I'm not the guy. If you're trying to run an online training program, I'm not your guy. Like it's a very specific thing that I do. So all of that to say, to answer your question, it was probably about 18 months ago. We were like, okay, we're really going to like focus on this and focus being all in on the gym industry and see where it goes because, and this is a thing that I have mixed feelings about because, it's not lost on me the explosion of the fitness guru industrial thought leader complex over the past couple of years because the reality is, I saw this come out 2.5 years ago. I was like, bet everybody that's like even remotely competent that learns how to run a Facebook ad is going to start doing this as the extra thing. Also because if you don't have a massive gym, for a lot of these guys are like, I'm making an extra $3,000 a month.
Working as
Holy
much.
cow.
How do I use this small sector of knowledge that I have and parlay that into more money?
Yeah. And listen, I'm not knocking it. Like, there's no secret. There's a variance of skill set. There's individuals that are proficient in the marketing sales, but don't have the goods. And there are people that, are maybe smaller, but like really know what they're talking about. Right. Having said all that, even though I have some mixed feelings about that reality, because I very much value being an operator, right? And I think that's part of the impetus of why I decided to go into this Alloy franchise and try to open up 10 to 20 of those is because I also have operational chops. Like I'm not the guy that's like just talking about the thing. I'm fucking good at this. And if I do the thing, I'll make
Mark's referring to Rick Mayo's franchise model, which is Alloy Personal Training.
Thank you.
Incredible 1,400 square feet.
Yep. Simple model.
We'll talk about that too in a minute.
Yeah.
But, so, okay, where's Business Unicorns at? What does that look like? You guys have got the incredible podcast. The newsletters are great. You guys you're doing retreats in Vegas. I've seen all that good stuff. How many people enrolled?
So right now we just are like 2 members away from hitting 100 members. Which was like, and we were like around, I think 40, 18 months ago. And we were like, okay, let's see if we can put some effort in and see what happens. We think we're actually going to hold there for a little bit and wait listed for a while because the next step up, if we want to go to 200, 300, that's going to require us to operationalize the business more so than we have. I wouldn't say that we haven't operationalized it, but I would say because of, I think both my and Keeler's interests in this, I think that actually is a skill set that we both have is really deeply operationalizing. And a lot of the, again, this is not a knock, just an observation. And this was us until recently too. A lot of these types of businesses seem to be not particularly operationalized, right? Because it's often a lifestyle business, which is great. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's like a gym owner that like, and they'd scale it up to, and usually they're not going to do more than like 100 million a year, right? That's usually where like you're bumping up against the single person. If you want to get to that 2, 3, 5 million range, that becomes a very different business. It's a much smaller number. There's a handful of which, you and I probably could name all like 4 of them, right? So that is, I think, where we're at right now. I think in practice, our strategies probably don't change a ton, but it's no secret. The amount of marketing we're doing right now is to create optionality, right? Because very much I understand that the things I'm doing now are people that aren't going to buy for 5 years anyway. So if I really want to have the option to scale, we got to kill the marketing right now, which we're definitely pumping out stuff. We feel very good about it. I think, again, it's a skill set that we have. And then we'll see, because of course one has to consider lifestyle, right? I do think I'll have more bandwidth here as I step back further, but also Alloy is very attractive too. And, that's, I think, another one of these great debates. On the one hand, it's like, pick your lane and run with it, be all in. On the other hand, everybody read, Who Not How a couple of years ago, which I think is both true and then maybe enabled, I think, some unhelpful squirrel characteristics of some entrepreneurs. Like, well, I'm running 9 businesses because I just hired this person. It's like, they all suck. They know what they're doing. They're bad at operations. So anyway, I think the long-term future of that probably still remains to be seen, but I'm interested in that to sort of go back to think how we got on this, because the reality is part of why everyone gets drawn to is not only is it easier, but as opportunity vehicle, there's not really a cap on it. I mean, there is, because the total addressable market training gym owners are, you probably have some numbers on this. I mean, the number everyone seems to throw out, which feels right, is like there's 30,000. There's 30,000 brick and mortar independent training gyms. It's probably leaving aside class-based chains, are probably a separate animal.
Yeah, I think once you compartmentalize all the different business models that are out there, I'd say maybe as a total pie.
Yeah, so, and that's not a huge total addressable market. There's going to be more and more competition all the time. There's going to be more and more people hanging up their shingles. So, I do think that one might say is a limit, but in practice, even so, if you compare that to the vehicle that is a brick and mortar training gym, very different vehicle, very different margins. There's a lot of different tactics and strategies you can use for a non-location independent business that you can't leverage with a brick and mortar unless you have an online thing. And that's challenging for a different set of reasons. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And the full disclosure there is a lot of it, I think, depends on what we decide in the next 6 months as far as, also how much is everybody willing to work? It's like life is pretty good, like at a certain point, it's like, okay, we could, because the thing that we know to be true is there's a chance, and we would do everything to prevent this, but if we decided to really grow that business, we'd have to be willing to go through a painful valley as the business changes. That's going to, the original clients are like, wait, what's happening now? I can't, I can't get on Kira's calendar anymore.
Your margin's going to go down as you hire up. So you can
So, I think it's something we're considering, and we haven't really made a decision, because also, I think there's a version of what we're doing now that, easily doubles and, potentially triples the revenue without much additional staffing and much more complexity. There'll be some.
Sure.
And maybe that's the world where it's like, okay, well, maybe we do that. And then maybe MFF has like 5 locations, and then maybe I have like 10 to 20 alloys. And then maybe like I finally start the Broadway investment fund, which I've been like noodling around in on my side. So to be determined.
With the Business for Unicorns, do you guys run that, like, is that a duration-based thing? Like, hey, it's 12 weeks of whatever, or is it a continuous month over month? Like, what is the actual structure of that consulting look like? Some people, it's like group education. You guys get on a call, and then we have a private Facebook group. What does that actually look like?
So it is just it's a 12-month signing up to work with us. I would know, one thing that I think we've shown admirable restraint, and I think the great lesson for me of MFF is too many things. And it's hard because they're all good, and now I can't unwind them. So we've shown admirable restraint with we only sell one thing. We don't even really sell coaching anymore. It's like you do like a 1-hour call, costs you a lot of money. I can do that. Or you do this thing. And if you can't do this thing, I hope we can work together someday when you do the only
like courses online, like pre-shot videos, things like that?
It's a bunch of shit. Okay. Yeah. So basically the core thing you're getting is up to 90 minutes of one-on-one coaching calls with mostly Keeler and Ben, though myself and Pete have some limited availability. That's kind of the core thing. You also have quarterly retreats. So those right now are 3 in person and 1 virtual, that include a day of content-specific learning and 1 day where half the room does quarterly planning, if that's something you need to help us to facilitate. It's comparable, I think, to an EOS Lite, but stripped down to way it's actually used for gym owners, because EOS is great. I love it. I think it's amazing. It's a little bit more than the average gym owner probably needs to be messing with. And then there's a track B. So the individuals that have their own quarterly planning system, because that is one thing we're pretty tough about. It's like, you've got to do some planning. You've got to have some KPIs, or I don't know what to do. I can't help you if you... I'll help you get the numbers, but you got to get the numbers, right? I can't work with you with love, with so much love and kindness. So you have the retreats, you have the coaching, and then there's other bells and whistles. So there's a bi-weekly group coaching call in smaller cohorts. There is a bunch of courses and a learning management software we have online that have filmed a lot of the live courses we've done. So if somebody wants to go deeper on time management or coaching conversations or customer service or management and leadership or whatever else is on there, there's obviously a Facebook group, and then there's also now multiple office hours once per week. So for instance, that is the main way people get in touch with me, because I've been very candid with all of them. I don't think I'm actually a great coach. I think I'm okay, and maybe this is I don't think it's a limited belief. I think I'm actually just okay, but I think it's also true that Michael is the most gifted coach I have ever scene.
Because it's different. Like LeBron's a great basketball player. He's probably not a great coach. Like you were great at being an operator and doing this, but then taking what you intrinsically just knew to do and then giving that to someone. That's the hardest thing. Like I tell people, you go to a conference and you see 20 people speak and you are blown away. Go to the one that was speaking in which they didn't do what you currently do. Do the one that like was adjacent to it or taught like
the same but different.
Yeah, because the person who did the thing that you exactly do, they're going to have such a skewed lens on it. And education is something that you have got. The more you see, like the more I started traveling and doing this, the more I branched out of what global gyms, then the CrossFit gyms, then the franchises, and I get to do all this stuff. The more I go around and see the market, the better I get at giving education on it because I've got more data points.
100%. Yeah. So, and for me, that is the thing, also I think where my skill sets and my interests are, because I do think I'm proficient at speaking. I do think I'm good at making content. I think I'm good at teaching, but I'm not always patient for one-on-one coaching. So I think I crush, like I'll put myself up against any for one-to-many and for creating models and frameworks. I love numbers. That's the other thing too, at this point, I know you're the same. It's like, I have like 7 questions I can ask and it's like, boom, 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 this, right? It's like not that complicated. It's like, there's not that many things I need to know. And then invariably I'll find a glaring error. And at this point, I have my own algorithm for sequentially what needs to be fixed next, right? So I'm happy to create a lot of those things where I know that people need and deserve, and I'm not the best at, is being patient, being slow, and also being willing to ask the kind of like insightful coaching questions that can also unlock when there's like a limiting belief mindset thing here. And I'm just not the most patient person in the world, right? It's like a limitation of mine because I love the thing, but my brain is going so fast, so if somebody like didn't do the thing, I'm like, why don't you do the thing? But that's like part of what they're paying for, right? So I want to take ownership of that's my failing and not theirs. And I feel like I have such a blood debt. Like if somebody like hires me to work with anything, if there's any money exchange for something I'm doing, I am like so desperate to take care of that person, and they deserve someone that's going to be patient with them. And it is unfair and I realize there's a certain personality type that, likes like a punch in the face once in a while. And, so if they need me to be like mean mommy, I can do that sometimes. But I know a lot of people need someone with the patience and also the interest in that kind of process, right? So like, and different people, have different, I think, definitions of coach versus consultant versus mentor, et cetera, however you want to say it. So I guess the way I think of those terms, I think I'm probably better at like a mentor, like someone is a little further on the path, can tell you what I've done. A consultant, you can ask me questions and I have a ton of answers and I got plays. A coach, where I'm going to like ask you open-ended questions and then reflect back and focus on your feeling words. That's just not my game.
I remember dating my current girlfriend, and first time she ever hung out at the house, it was during COVID probably, and she listened to me do a full, 3 calls in a day, kind of the max. And we got off. She goes, people pay you to talk to them like that? I said, I mean, she just knows that's how I just talk. Yeah. But it's also like building the brand around WTF and all that. It's like, nobody is shocked when I'm like, you're being such a fuckface. You know exactly that's the one. Why? You're doing that because you fucking bought this truck that you knew you couldn't afford, and now you're doing this thing to leverage the fact that you're broke at the gym.
Yeah.
But that's exactly kind of what I infer they need. There's plenty of people they can go to get answers to different solutions and things like that. It's like the delivery and like, I think the honesty of like, all right, at least I know if he rips my asshole through my nostrils, that's probably what I need. And if I feel like I need that and I can't do it myself, that seems to be like my sweet spot.
Yeah, I certainly do see that there is certainly a place for mean mommies here and there. Yeah. I think the thing that, for me has been sort of the ongoing question about this is, what are the things that will lead to sustainable change for the person? Because I have some like really kind of out there theories on what might be happening psychologically there and sort of the dynamic of people because of their nature or the nurture that sort of require this kind of domineering, like I need like a parent figure to, say things to me in a way that are mean enough that I feel like just bad enough to take action, but not so much that I'm completely sort of like crushed. And I think that's maybe another piece of this is I think I have moments of that desire and there's a part of me that resists that type of thing.
Sure.
Because I don't like putting on that hat. And I think, again, that's probably another limitation as a coach. Optimally, I would have whatever the person kind of needs, right? And sometimes, they need whipped cream and sometimes they need the shit. And it's certainly not to suggest that I'm unwilling to be very, very, very direct, right? Because that's the other piece of this too, that if you think on a meta level, I have also observed that is something that I do think has facilitated my success in all the roles I've been in, from MFF to leadership to whatever, is people are drawn to certainty. And while I believe I'm actually very humble and I'm at times introspective to a fault, if someone challenges my thinking, I realize just logistically, technically, I speak in such a way with a certain type of energy and decisiveness that I know that people are drawn to, right? And that's also because content, as we know, is like not great if you're like, and not that I never do this, I sort of do sometimes, but it's not great when it's just a parade of equivocations, right? Where it's like, well, sometimes, and then maybe, and I think you could, I mean, that's a real challenge with social media, right? You have to be clickbait. You have to be like, the dumbest things that gym owners say, the 3 stupid shit things that gym owners say, and then it's blah, 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 and then it's like, okay, it's a little clickbait. It's like you might say it in this context, but also it's still stupid, but like I get why you say it. I'm not making you a bad person.
Yeah. And it's the content thing. And even when you started jumping in very heavily into doing YouTube and all that.
Yeah.
How did that play in your head? Because you were doing consulting and coaching and mentoring with these guys before you kind of got heavy into your own content, like public facing content.
Yep.
Whereas me, I was making this stupid content and then it just people, and this is like 2015, and like that coaching came after it. Did you start thinking like, okay, how much of the secret sauce do I put out? Or like, did you feel like you had to mimic the personality that you portrayed to the clients now? And not that any of the when you say portray, it's all inauthentic.
Totally.
Did you feel like, okay, I've already got kind of this demeanor I have when I coach.
Yeah. That's
what I'm going to put on. Or, I mean, you with your actor background, you can probably pivot on different roles and different, caricatures. What was that like for you? I mean, obviously, you're a thespian. Like you
sure.
Like I love fucking being on the camera just like you do.
Yeah.
How did you think of what for me is gonna come to life on, because what you do on YouTube is way different than what you do on a stage in front of 300 people.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there are I will say this, I think at least for me, the way that I've thought about this is there are some similarities. Certainly size is different. Pacing on YouTube is very different. The preparation process is very different. When I give a talk, I certainly don't memorize word for word, but I've rehearsed it pretty thoroughly. I know where the jokes are. If I give a talk repeatedly, I can sort of play with the timing. Like maybe the joke will land better if like I pause on this word, or maybe I do like an eyebrow here after this. YouTube, of course, is a little bit different. The pace is faster. Both like the speaking pace is faster. There's less pauses. They're jump cutting more, and also the preparation is very different, right? And that's another thing is I've been iterating in the process. I've started to do more preparation, but I don't rehearse what I'm going to say. I've like written out more and more. I've gotten more dialed in. Okay, here's exactly what I want to say, because of course, as the saying goes, I would have written you a shorter letter if I'd had the time. So after my editor being like, "Can we not get the 15-minute one?" I'm like, "But it's good." And then I'm like, "Oh, it's not bad. It's okay." But it was, I think, broadly an attempt to, okay, I think I'm comfortable on camera. I think I can leverage some of the ways I like to, and again, this is going to sound like so pretentious, I'll puke in my mouth, but some of the ways I want to make art, right? How I want to create, like this, I want to make like a gift. I want to make art for the people that are going to benefit from this. And it's also still a little bit of an open conversation, right? So, in real time, it was funny. I found this absolute digital marketing killer based in India. She's amazing. I'm obsessed with her. And she's so good. And part of course, the conversation we're having is because she is like in. I'm like, I film some fucking videos. I put them up. They're fine. Here we go. People get them. It's good. I say funny shit. Got an editor. Do some funny shit. Great. It's good. Great. Blast them. I'm fine. I'm good. And she's so dialed in. She's like, all right, so the first week it's going to be a curiosity inducing title, like the subscribers. Then week 2, we have to change it for more SEO purposes because now it won't be the subscribers. It'll be people finding you through Google, and the thumbnails are pretty good, but I'm noticing there's reverse print here. I also think, and like
it was going from your intrinsic to her instruction.
Whoa. Yeah. And she's super killing it. And the YouTube stuff is definitely a little bit of an experiment still. My thing is like, I'm going to go all in for 2 years. I'm going to give it everything I can. But even within 2 years, it's like, we can't have like 2 full-time people working on the YouTube channel. It doesn't bear that yet. I don't know. Maybe we should. Maybe a listener, if you're listening, you're like, Mark, you should have 2 full-time people full-time. That's not to say that we're not investing a lot of like resources and stuff on it, but it is just to say there's always going to be constraints for how much we want to tighten every screw, and not being a YouTube creator. And also by, tendency, I am happy being sloppy and fast.
Yeah.
Right. That's definitely a thing that's like served me. That's another thing I've observed a lot of people struggle with is I will be perfectionist sometimes with my relationships where I want them to be good. And that will sometimes get in my way. My work, man, like writing, like, and I'm saying this with sensitivity because a lot of people are maybe getting triggered listening to watch. It's like, what do you mean, you asshole? But like, I don't care. It's shitty. I write it down and it sucks. And then I make it a little better and then I send it out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just a machine. I'm just like
one piece of content of 1,000 someone's going to see that these do not have to be Rembrandts.
Exactly. So, and I realize for a lot of people, even working with gym owners, right, to get them to do like the content thing. And listen, there's a case to be made, like what type of content should gym owners do? Some of it's like so outside their comfort zone. There's maybe different strategies one can employ. But overall, I'm a fan of things like email marketing and content. And the missing piece I've observed for a lot of people is a willingness to just suck, to just be shitty, and then just like make it slowly better over time.
Two scariest buttons to hit is record and looking at yourself on camera and doing this thing and having imposter syndrome and like, oh God, I'm a fucking douche.
Yeah.
My friends are going to think I'm trying to be one of those guys. Then once you get over the balls to do that, which could take you years, then the scariest button is upload.
Yeah.
So you have these two buttons that kind of get in your way. And I know people that can never get to the first one and some that get to the first, but they can't get to the second.
Right.
And but those that can, and I look at like content, sure, YouTube, but I think platforms, quick is good. Like I was watching, I used to study Casey Neistat's videos.
Yeah, sure.
Casey would have 80 cuts by 90 seconds in.
Right.
And I remember being like, fuck me. But I'm like, that's the way the story keeps me forward the whole time.
Yeah.
But then, Alex Hormozi can put out a 63-minute video, 2 angles, just add a whiteboard. And I think it's true. I think it can be long as it's interesting.
Yeah. 100%.
That's it. Like Joe Rogan, when the idea of a 3-hour podcast came out, and people were like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
When you get an hour, if I do an hour with Mark, I only get to talk to Mark about what's MMF doing. I don't go in here versus give someone an insight. Because what I found most people wanted, I want to know not the thing you are designed to tell me. I want to know all the shit that was in the back that maybe you didn't have the time to tell me. Like if I could just mic us up while you and me go get dinner and have a cocktail, that's the kind of shit people generally want. That's what they would listen for 3 hours.
For sure.
I've loved that you dived into the content and the shit. I mean, it's the nice thing is I get people like, dude, I watched your video the other day and I'm like, what video is that? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's from 2017. But I'm like, it lives in perpetuity. The internet doesn't forget it. It lives in perpetuity.
Yeah. And that's totally like the game. Like at the very least, well, listen, I don't think this world, at this point, I'm pretty confident we're good. But, even if I was like, all right, well, whatever, I made like 400 videos over 2 years, they're going to live there in perpetuity. Yeah. The other nice thing now is it's very rare people ask me for a thing. I can't be like, watch this video, it saves me so much time. But admittedly, the other two pieces that I have found challenging with content, I've gotten over them, but they are like, is like one, the industry keeps changing. I keep changing my mind, so that's one piece too. It's like, I'm constantly iterating. So like, things are going to get cold after a certain point. It doesn't move that fast. It's not like anything probably on YouTube. I'm like, well, this is super stupid.
If it's not relevant anymore or if it's changed?
No, I don't think I would probably pull anything, but there's a thing. If I do this for 5 years, as I suspect I will, there's probably things I said last year that 5 years will be like, either I've changed my mind about altogether and I thought I was wrong then, or at the very least, my preferred tactic and strategy is different than that. That's not what I recommend anymore,
Wouldn't you be more suspect as someone who hasn't changed their mind over 5 years?
100%. And then the other piece, of course, is, you're going to climb up the tree further. There's going to be more people looking at the monkey's butt, right? And the nature of, particularly the short form content that plays is you don't get all the context, right? So it's like, one of like my stupid clickbait titles, which is not like totally true, but kind of true, is like, this is the stupidest offer, don't do this, but right? Because I often see pre-sales being done very, very badly, but the context is, except for when it's done well. And here's the particular situations in which actually it's like a great idea. You probably should consider it, right? And it was funny because I'm not involved in most of the publishing, right? So like I basically take the raw file, and then things happen. And then Rosemarie does it, and then Ken edits, and then Sai creates a thumbnail, and then Arunima handles the digital marketing, and then Rosemarie takes the shorts, and the shorts get put on Instagram. So like after I make the raw footage, like I don't think about it anymore. It's like it all happens. The shorts, the other thing I've observed, which is completely acceptable, and again, makes sense, and I'm not particularly aggrieved about this, is you're often going to lose a lot of those important qualifications.
Seconds, yeah.
So somebody's going to jump in on the comments and be like, well, what about, because there was like a guy who watched the pre-sale one, and like I appreciate the comment. It was definitely like, I appreciate the comment. The guy was like, oh yeah, but what if they have a very high interest loan, and by getting the pre-sale they'll pay that down faster, and I was like, I didn't want to engage in like, yeah, that's true. In my experience of brick and mortar business owners, that's not necessarily the chess they're playing, but like you're absolutely not wrong. And I did say, which was, I didn't really get into that, though I do think that's like a gentle counter to that. But what I did say is like, you're not wrong. And yes, go to the video, because the video is all the qualifications, right? The clickbait is this, but then it's like, except for these like 4 situations where it completely is worth doing.
Yeah. Whenever I think of content, I never do it to be polarizing, but I do think of the topic. And if the topic couldn't go 51-49, split down the middle of, I hate it, I love it, I agree with it, I denounce it. I never want, in high school, my favorite thing to do besides lacrosse was debate.
Sure.
Like, and I wanted to, I would debate pro-Holocaust. Give me the most fun topic. I will debate. I will fucking denounce anything. Why? Because I want the challenge of trying to convince you of my mind.
Yeah.
That's like, I literally still have dreams. Like these are daydreams of when I go, like I'm speaking next weekend in Nashville, of someone challenging me on stage and wanting to like fucking, capture a moment on scene, like on a camera where they catch me in something. Oh, but you said this. And I get to have that, spontaneous debate with someone right then and there and just fucking destroy them. I literally have that as a daydream if I'm not, in the middle of the day, I'm like, I was just fantasizing about just crushing somebody in a debate. And there's just something about arguing with people. I love a good argument where both sides bring some shit in. No one walks away changing their mind, but they're like, good job. That was a tough point.
Yeah.
I couldn't count at that point. That was strong. I like that.
Yeah, I am not contentious by nature, and I love to, I wouldn't even say argue, because again, it's not contentious. Maybe the debate is the word. I love to challenge. I like to like make my thinking better.
Sure.
Right? Because there is a lot of sloppy thinking in the world. And one of the things that certainly defines me is small L liberal enlightenment values, which is to say, if I can't John Stuart Mill, if I can't steel man your argument and explain your argument better than you can explain it, I am very possibly missing things.
Sure.
And often, that's a lot of what happens, right? In the discourse, it's like, it's straw man. People are just arguing past each other. They're unwilling to concede their points for all sorts of reasons. It's like, and again, it's certainly that I'm not completely immune to this. I'm positive that I do that for times, but I aspire to be somebody that is always willing to fight in the spirit of collectively refining our thinking to improve our thinking and get to better answers together. And I really, really enjoy that process, right? I find that, honestly, it happens. I have less occasion to do that in the fitness industry. And it's sort of, I'm reflecting, I'm not clear why that is. I think there's certainly a lot of social issues, social moral philosophy that I really value that. And I want to know the person that the smarter the person is and the more they think differently, I'm just like, what? It's thrilling. It's thrilling to me to find out you think what?
Yeah.
Because also you're so smart. So immediately I'm like, wait, what? Hold on. And if I were to put in a nutshell, the secret to mine and Michael's, the success of our 12 years of partnership is we disagree violently about so many things, but it's never emotionally contentious. And it's funny now to observe, because only recently, again, people have even been in the same room with us, because Michael's been out at MFF for a long time. So it's been funny now, the Business Uniforms team, as they've grown, to see Michael and I not go at each other, but be kind of annoyed and snap with each other. But it's because, one, there's so much emotional safety in the relationship that the relationship is never a threat. And two, even if I am certain that Michael is absolutely wrong, there's no way, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But part of me is, I'm like, also, I don't know, you're smart. It's like, okay, I know for sure you're wrong, but humor me. Why do you think that's true? Because maybe I am missing something.
And when smart people are wrong, all it means is they're really close. So like, if I'm the same way. My GM and me, I said, if we go 1 week where we don't have a solid debate, like a duke it out debate, that means either we're not challenging, we're being yes men to each other. And who's ever wrong, like truly, let's say I am wrong in this, it just means I'm close. I'm close to a better solution. You might have the thing that pushes me over the edge to get me to that better solution. It's like playing sports against people that are just good and better than you enough to force you. Like they don't just crush you. But talk to me about Alloy. So you've got this, and again, this does not scale like an Alloy fitness franchise.
It won't scale like an Alloy,
No,
for sure,
not.
For sure.
I spoke at a thing last year, and I got to meet Rick. He spoke there as well. And anyone who's been in the industry knows who Rick Mayo is, and incredibly smart guy. I was even jamming with Mike Garcia over at Loud Rumor. And he's invested in some alloys as well. What made you invest in someone else's model?
Yeah, I think that there were a few things. I mean, certainly the thing I am most driven by, I think, is challenge and growth and learning. And there were things about my experience as this very unusual, freakishly weird. Even the successes of MFF are a little bit of a limitation as far as the experiences I bring to bear with my professional package and my skill set, right? And the number of tools I can pull out. And again, I am not content to discuss theory. I'm like, I want to get in there and like do the thing. So there were a few things that made this make sense to me, not the least of which that I had an operating partner go in on it that was willing to be on the ground and do a lot of the stuff. Right. And I'm very involved right now. I suspect I'll be very involved for a while. I imagine over time, I'm really going to move more towards maybe an investor. And again, it depends on what's going to happen with this. So that was certainly one piece. I had somebody else who was also believing in this. So I think for me, the things I was interested in learning were, even just doing ground games in other markets. It's just a different beast. Like one of, I think, the great unnamed phenomena for fitness business marketing for brick and mortars is there are very distinct differences in markets, right? And this is the thing that's intuitive when I say out loud, but if you listen to, as I do, like literally every fitness business podcast for 3 years, I've listened to every single one of them. I've like there's 40 on my phone. I've listened to all of them. And I also, again, going back to our previous point, you can't qualify everything, but it's sort of obvious that everybody has their bias based on the markets they've kind of worked in. That just makes sense, right? And a tier one city is a very different model than a rural market or a suburban market. So I knew that there were going to be things I was going to learn that were just going to make me better at being just an absolute assassin if people need help with anything in regards to their fitness business. To be very clear, it's certainly not suggesting I'm like stealing IP, right? Because I'm like, that was a chat we had with Rick very upfront. I was like, I just want you to know, because he's the best. And we've known each other for a while. And I really appreciate that because it's, as you might know, that's usually like not the thing. If you own a gym, you don't
successful on one side of the fitness.
Yeah, you don't open up another gym that's kind of the same model or similar model. But, I really appreciate Rick. And honestly, we've grown closer since then, of course. I think we knew each other, but I think, my reputation was such that he believed correctly that I was going to, I'm a loyal person, I'm like going to honor that. So certainly, to be clear, it's not like I'm ripping off Allo IP, but it's also not wrong that I'm going to be learning things that I'm not going to learn by, having even 4 locations in New York City. As I mentioned, I'm also interested in the scale opportunities that franchise can have. As I've mentioned, if you look at the independent brick and mortar operators, people that are true independent brick and mortars, I don't know of anybody that's gotten corporately owned into the double digits. They might be out there, but in most cases, it seems there's some ceiling of complexity around 5, 7 that is very hard to bounce past.
I mean, Core Power is still corporately owned. Core Power Yoga.
Oh, is Core Power corporately owned? Solid Core is, I know. Solid Core is very interesting. Solid Core is,
Solid Core is one.
Solid Core is like at 100, which is...
Alchemy is they're not a double digit yet. I think they're at 7.
Yeah.
7 or 8. But yeah, you're right. I mean, corporately owned, and because I mean the idea if you're going to stay corporately owned is because you're looking to have someone come in and acquire this thing
100%.
and buy your thing, and then they're going to franchise it or whatever it is, and you just got to prove the concept in different markets.
Yeah, and for me, first of all, MFF as a brand was not franchisable. And again, there's going to be a ceiling on this particular vehicle as much as I love it, and I was like, I've got the juice, I've got the gas, I've got the bandwidth, like I got the chops, like. Yes, I'm happy to grow this consulting and coaching. I'm so passionate about that. But I've always felt, even though I think a fair criticism one could make is it's adding complexity to my life, I've kind of liked that I kind of go back and forth because I think each makes the other better. So, I was interested, like, okay, what would it be like to really kind of scale that? And it seemed going in on a franchise with someone I really trusted would facilitate and speed up that process because, opting when you go into a franchise, it's similar to coaching in that I am essentially paying for speed. I'm paying to have, I don't want to find the vendors. I just tell me what vendors to do. And for somebody that is entrepreneurial, I am, something of an executive hermaphrodite. Like I'm down with vision, but I will operate like a fucker. Like I am down. I will make the trains run on time. I know how to manage the shit out of people. So I don't have any ego about running somebody else's play. Even at MFF, honestly, all I've done is aggregate anything anyone has ever said about the fitness business for 20 years, which, by the way, I will say, if the fitness industrial complex had blossomed sooner, it could have saved Bowery because as recently as 2017, when we opened, information was not nearly as accessible. It was a very different landscape. This was pre-gym launch. This was pre-lab rumor scaling. This was pre-two-brain. It wasn't there. That information wasn't possible. You had these more, and I don't say this is pejorative, but you had these more mom and poppy lifestyle masterminding groups that hadn't really done a good job of disseminating marketing information at scale, which is more valuable content, right? So all of that to say, my thought is I think I can speed this up if I go with somebody I trust. I'm very interested by, I'm sure you know Jamie Weeks, who owns 1 billion Orange Theories. I was like, maybe that's the move. And then frankly, the other thing that I knew that I stood to benefit from, and I feel like I'm already benefiting from this, is one of Rick's superpowers is simplicity. He keeps things dead simple. And I feel like it really wasn't
his generation. It's his generation.
Yeah. And I just, my impulse, which I'm finally can put in a headlock when it happens, like, shut up, Mark, shut up, is just to make things complicated. Yeah. So putting myself in handcuffs and being like, just tell me what I can and can't do. Your way. Yeah. I'll shut up. Like my head, it will be down. I will go so fast and I will execute so well. So that was part of it too, being like putting myself in handcuffs and just trusting that you'll figure it out. And the final thing I'll mention is I'm just interested in franchising as a model, right? It's also the opportunity to go through the vetting process of looking at a bunch of different brands in and out of fitness. I feel like I understand P&L so much better now because everything, my P&L, there's millions of things on there. It's a cast of millions. It's so much shit. Like a P&L for most of you people watching, like you lucky humans, you got there's 9 expense items. There's 4 revenue streams. I've got hundreds and hundreds. It's a disaster and I can do it. And again, there's other things I probably learned from that, but it is just everything I know about business, I think has just massively gone so much. My learning has increased so much in the past couple of years. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it's literally just putting me in handcuffs so I can learn to be simple. And I think I'm doing it now. Even with Biz for Unicorns, I'm like, oh, I'm finally doing it. I keep thinking of all these ideas for other services. I keep being like, nope, maybe we just sell one thing. And they say sell one thing to 1 million. Maybe we just sell one thing to 5 million. Now, realistically, are we going to do that? Maybe not. Could I overcorrect? I suppose. But anyway, that's part of my strategy and my master plan there.
So I've got clients, they're mom and pop, micro gym owners of whatever variety. And there's some of them that are doing really well.
Yeah.
This is the only industry they know.
Yeah.
And they know the lightning's probably not going to strike twice. It's not a scalable thing. Whatever they came up with, they got lucky and it works.
Yep.
But even if they were to recreate it to I'm not going to lie, I don't think I would even with 10 years of knowledge, I'd probably be able to make getting here to 5 years, but that's not franchisable, right? Yep. Someone's not looking to do that.
Yep.
So they'll go and they might go franchise a metabolic and they're adding to their fitness portfolio. Like I stay within the industry and I can capture if I have my own group fitness thing here, maybe I do an Alloy personal training and I stay within the market, but I go 2 different business models because those clients don't want this and these clients don't want that.
Totally.
And it's not going to cannibalize each other. That's one thing to it. You know, I was up in DC for a franchise up there. 5 locations, you got to deal with cannibalization. And then when commercial real estate has to churn over, and so I'm just like, fuck, I'm forced to go right in my other location's backyard, or I have to shutter this location. And now there's highs and lows of that whole thing when you're on a franchise, right?
Totally.
And the big franchisors are looking at it like they need their top players to consistently be top players in order to sell to more players. With your model, with Alloy, I mean, again, I just try to explain to people, it's this nice little 1,300-ish, I think, square foot rectangle. It is one-on-one training. It is, in my opinion, more, I hate the word community. I like culture. Community is just people. The KKK has community. Prisons have community, right? You put a bunch of people similar. We're here in New York. You put a bunch of people with Jets jerseys on at a bar on a Sunday. They don't know each other. That is community. Culture is everything, though. And I think this community thing has been taken over too many small business owners where that's not your friend. You have a transactional responsibility to that. They walked in the door and they said, you have something I want. And you said, you have something I want, money. Let's exchange. It's transactional. And then if you end up going to their bar mitzvah and you become best friends, that's fucking great. But always remember your responsibility. In personal training, it's still so much more of a transactional relationship because even though it's one-on-one and you get to know that person really well and there is a higher stickiness and retention rate than group. I think there's just so much more transaction based when it is one-on-one, and it keeps the drama and the fuck ups that come from community, I think, at more bay than this group fitness model does.
I think that's probably true. Now, I will say this just to clarify. So Alloy is a small group personal training. So it is 6-on-1 at a time. But I think that is true not only because the small group training is a different dynamic than like classes, but it's also the other thing that drew me to Alloy, which is part of also just me just getting older, is it's like, first of all, I'll say this from a fitness perspective, I like small group rather than classes. We do classes because I run a fucking circus. We do everything. And I think we do classes damn well. And listen, I got a strength coach background. Like there's limitations of classes. You know, I get it. It's more affordable, but you're 53, you have a double knee replacement. You sure you don't want to do small group? No, I want to dance to the music. You sure you have to be getting up and off the ground a lot? You sure? So while I very much see value in class, I think it's a great experience, a great solution for a lot of people. Certainly the price value is better for a lot of people because it's more scaled. For me as a fitness professional, I'm much more drawn to the programming of a small group, which can create a much closer proxy for one-on-one training, individualization, incremental weight changes, a more variety of implements to really meet them at the
revenue per hour of any of the models.
And then from a business perspective, you know, particularly if you win, that's the game, right? The marketing game is like, it's personal training or it's not a small group, right? So if you can win that and get in that place in their mind, then the price also looks so affordable. But to your point about it not being, you know, the challenge you're into where the owner's like, I thought we were friends. How dare you? Would you turn me? What the fuck? Now, certainly part of that I think is, you know, I wouldn't say a novice business owner, but that is, I think, that is the example of a business owner just being too into their business emotionally, which like I have done. I'm not judging. I've done it too. But also them being older. I think when you have a bunch of 20, 30 somethings that I'm coming here to work out with other young people that are
and socially
fit,
we're gonna go get
and we're going to drink
afterwards.
And this place is dripping with sexual tension, which by the way, I also had that in my career. So like, I get it. I think that's a lot of fun. But again, there's something to be said for the stability of a population that is a little bit older, they're in a little bit different place in their life.
Money. And fitness is, there's 3 F's in each market. In my market, when I had Urban Movement, it was, they just moved to Charlotte. They're young. They want to get friends. They want to get fit and they wanted to fuck. In the burbs, the best ones are females who are fat and 40. Okay. So you have like these 3 different F's and there's different ones as well. But like when you get into the semi-private, no 29-year-old thinks semi-private when they think fitness. They think an open gym like Crunch or they think group fitness like Barry's like MFF. But that 56-year-old who owns 6 State Farm agencies and goes golfing every weekend. he's more than happy to make a sizable investment in small group training.
Yeah.
And then when you knock that square footage down, like, my God, the amount of out parcels that you can put in an alloy in, incredible. I mean, the real estate options on it are so much better.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers like really work. You're also dealing with like a very lean staff, and that admittedly that sword does cut both ways. So there's definitely risk involved with that as well. But I think another thing too that is an advantage of alloy is, I can't say this for all class-based concepts, but it is not a secret that certainly depending on the modality, broadly they trend a little bit more female. It's not to say that man is uncomfortable going to an Orange Theory. Certainly, I think metabolic is pretty gender neutral in a way that I think is like valuable. But alloy, again, I wouldn't say like the avatar is an older man per se. Like, I don't think it's geared towards either gender, but that's the other thing too. For, a 50-something-year-old man, that type of person, I just think it is a type of solution that wasn't available, right? Like, it's...
Yeah, tell me the brand that 50-year-old male is like, you're like, oh, they crush it with 50-year-old males.
Yeah.
I mean... I've seen him in an Orange Theory.
100%.
The treadmill is the bane of the existence there for an old dude. But no, you're right. Like, a Golf Tech is that franchise is really interesting. Yep. That's probably the closest thing I've seen to that avatar of an individual who can pay. He could pay 3x what they charge, because, my God, the value of beating his boss on the course on the weekends is worth, it's fucking priceless to it.
Yeah.
And that's just, when you solve bigger, more expensive problems, like what you're doing for 45 and 55-year-olds, they're just willing to pay more money.
Yeah. And they're more likely to stick around. I mean, there's a lot to be said for it and for me, it scratches both. Like, I think the numbers make sense. I think the business model makes sense. And then I think, again, like, as a fitness professional, somebody that's like still always going to be mission driven. It's like, okay, because it's kind of what I'm aging into, right? Like, older affluent guys, a little beat up, that like wants to do training. Now, admittedly, I'm not the perfect avatar, because I know enough that like I'm very happy to actually put in my ear pods and not talk to me when I work out. That's my me time. So I'm not the exact avatar. But yeah, I'm very drawn to working with that population. And to some extent too, this is something that's interesting, about MFF, which has been curious to see is, I've heard you speak on a very true thing, right? If you have the same clients for years and years and years, we run into an issue because, well, if it's still the same product and same brand, that may or may not work. And MFF has had a lot of same clients when I tell you the average age is like literally 12 years older than it was 12 years ago. So far, okay. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen if like suddenly instead of like, if we started, let's say it was like, 28 to 40, now we're more like 40 to 52 on average. It's not to say there aren't people here in their 30s and such, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens for 5 or 10 years.
Programming, you start getting a little more complaints from it, like the programming might have to change.
It's a thing.
It's also I've found that, gyms I have that have classes that specialize, like silvers classes or masters classes, 50 or 55 and older. Sometimes they like a trainer who is also somewhat a little bit closer to where they're at. So there's just these small things that, like, if you really want your customers to grow with you for a decade and they're young and 27, at some point you're probably going to need to daycare that, right? Or some kind of like, or whatever. You're going to have to accept the fact that that these things, you got to change with them. And then, but that means you probably got to change your marketing then, because otherwise then you have a dichotomy. You've got the young hot somethings and the 55-year-olds, and they might be, they might knuck it up in class and be cool. It makes a segmented experience. You wouldn't talk to the 55-year-old who's early retired the same way you're going to market and talk to the 27-year-old who's got his first job at fucking BOA.
100%. Yeah. And the metaphor that always feels salient is marketing is a bullseye, right? Where you got the bullseye, you're going to pick up a lot of people around them. That's great. But it seems always proven to be very clear on what the center of the bullseye is, because everything's got to go there. And then by speaking to that one individual, you'll pick up people around that are maybe not the exact fit, but still vibe.
So talk to me about being a franchisee. Which market did you open up in?
We are currently doing a build out for our first unit in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. So North Jersey. North Jersey.
Why'd you choose that market?
Well, it was a number of reasons. I think number one, that's where my operating partner lives. So that was really the most important reason, is there wasn't a world. He also owns another gym, so he wasn't going to be packing that up and moving to another part of the country. There are challenges and opportunities there, like there are in every.
You say operating partner, he'll be on site?
Yeah, he'll be on site for a while. I mean, the way that model works is you technically have a semi-absentee owner, but the semi-absentee owner, and this is the challenge sometimes when people get a franchise, we've gotten in with eyes very wide open, is like, that still might be 20 to 30 hours a week for at least for like a while, right? Now, if you hire correctly in the way that, again, I think there's another thing about the way the model's set up very well, but you've got to nail the hire, right? You've got to nail the fitness director, the operating partner, because ultimately you need somebody with like owner mindset, which also means you have to pay them. You have to compensate them accordingly that you can get that kind of caliber talent. And that's another thing about the model is you can put in some fat numbers when you put out that ad. I'll tell you what, we are nearing the end of our hiring process right now, and it's a very different caliber of candidate when they see those big all zeros. So
what does that comp plan look like?
Like up to 100K. You should be able to make up to 100K or more as the fitness director.
Is that what percentage of that is commission versus base salary?
It varies based on the market. We're in North Jersey, so our base is going to be higher than a lot of people. I think depending on the market, you maybe could go down to 55. My kind of philosophy on this is, again, I just rather pay the money, particularly for this. I'm not there as involved anyway, though I can do a lot of the logistical lifting on the back end. Greg also has another thing. So we really need somebody that's going to really be able to deliver. And, also the opportunity we can offer is not just the money too. It's like, we're building this thing. This is a little of my background. You want to come with me. This is Rick's background. You want to come with us on this thing, right? Yeah. You want to come with us on this journey we're going to have together. That's mainly why we chose that area. Now, the commercial real estate market there is not fun right now, right? So that's definitely that thing. It's like a little bit of a drag because it's a very affluent market. But at the same time, obviously the prices we can charge are very, very different in North Jersey than you can in other parts of the country. So it is probably a little bit higher risk, but it's also at least potentially higher return. And, we're pretty confident we're going to be able to.
The other benefit when you pay more, I tell people the one thing you can never predict or control the supply of your staff because life happens and people die and people get married and get kids.
Yeah, things happen.
But when you pay enough, when there's enough zeros and your comp plan is good, it's above market, you have to worry about the demand.
Yep.
Like you'll sit on a stack of resumes that didn't make the last round, but they were just this close. And that guy was better. But if he fucking moves in 3 years or he's gone, boom. And when you're doing the franchise thing and someone comes up in that system, there's so many great ways to golden handcuff yourself to them. But hey, listen, I'd love for you to own one of these one day.
Yeah.
They're expensive to get started. Even though you're going to make good money here, I'd love to help put up some cash for that and allow you to own your own at one point.
Yeah.
I'll take a small, 30% interest or whatever it is and give you some cash. There's such good ways to handcuff them to your organization and then let them generate opportunities for you beyond their W-2 role.
100 million %. And I think, that is a thing that is interesting to me about really all the sort of, at this point in my life, I'm very happy with where things are, right? The thing that is most interesting for me, and this is not to say that I'm not passionate about helping the clients. Of course I care about them too. But again, my day-to-day is my people, right? So for me, the other thing that's exciting about this is I am addicted to talent. I want to find young killers. And particularly now that I think now I really know how to support and build and mold. I finally figured this out. When I think about what I do, the only thing really I should be doing is just bury my partners and my employees with love, care, and attention. And I can't have that many. So it's got to be because there's just only so many hours in the day. And then just crush content, which is one half consuming everything. And the other half is just producing everything. And what's exciting about that opportunity is, finding young, amazing talent. I can't wait to work with this person. I just believe in them so much. And then giving them opportunities. And this is another trite comment, but it's nonetheless true that part of my obligation, I think, is to have dreams big enough that they can have dreams maybe not fit inside. That sounds sort of dismissive or diminishing.
Sure. There's a ripple effect.
Yeah, it's the reason why I'm interested in the ways that MFF can continue to grow. Is at this point, I love this business. I'm so proud of it, and I am most interested in growing because of my desire to create more opportunities for the people that are working this business. I'm just like obsessed. I'm just like drooling over their talent and their skill and their hustle. And I'm so driven to facilitate them having those opportunities. Like that's the thing that is just like endlessly exciting to me.
Yeah.
Which is not, again, it's not that I don't love the clients, but like honestly, I'm removed from a lot of it. And maybe that's not a good thing too. Like maybe I should find ways to get more client facing thing, but also like I trust them to do it. So
there was a point in my career where I didn't care much about giving someone fitness anymore. I went from 6 to midnight if I could give you a career.
Sure.
Right. Like, and I also, when I started thinking of skill sets, there are two things. I'm like, if you wanted to make your gym a magnet, because the one thing I feel you guys do well here that is underserved in the fitness industry is humor. Humor is one of the brand tone assets. Name me one funny fitness. The only other person besides you guys that I really like on it is street parking. They're an online. I mean, their office skits like that they spend. I mean, and those guys are doing $450,000 a month. They're just killing it. She kills it. They both do. Julian and Miranda But their comedy skits that they put out, that is a brand. Because otherwise, what do? You're going to teach me how to do a Romanian deadlift again. You're going to make a video about motivation and you get hard. Fuck that, man. Like, make me laugh. My God. I think of like me and my girlfriend talking about the only things I watch now is I will watch something that's going to hopefully make me more money, or I'll watch something that's going to make me laugh. Right. That's literally the two categories. Funny, haha, and money. And it's kind of like I go off my buddies. I laugh my ass off. Like if I go do a guys weekend, my jaw hurts when I
Right.
Otherwise, I'm working my face off. And it was like my two happy. Work and laugh. And then like do that, then become a place that people want to go to work because you create killers. Like be the Harvard. Like if you could do like an MFF business review of where coaches who trained here went to work afterwards and what they did. I mean, that's why Harvard doesn't have to. They're always going to have enough applicants.
No, it's so true, and certainly that's a thing. Again, at this point in my career, is so gratifying. We're at the point now where now it gets like the letters here and there. You know what I mean? Like if somebody like sharing about like what MFF was, and certainly there's a lot of people at MFF that wound up that like. Frankly, weren't that interested in fitness. They just really wanted to be at MFF, and they've gone on to do other things. But I think. For any of us doing this, I think they're thinking about this in a serious way. It's like, and by the way, the first couple of years also, I did not know that. I was like, oh, everyone's going to have a clubhouse. And it's like, oh, actually, no, not everybody is actually qualified for this. Not everybody wants this. But what I hope this place can be, and what I do think it's been, is again, are you becoming a better person? Are you becoming a better professional? So whatever you do going forward, they call them my unicorn astronauts. Like I want you to be better for having been here in the ways that matter to you and develop skills that will not only serve you professionally, but that so you master the difficult conversations that are required to be present and conscious like with your family, you know what I mean? Because that's a thing too. I'm so interested in work as a dojo because your family and like your partner and like, it's hard, right? Like it's so hard to like breathe and just sort of get like conscious and not like rub so hard against each other because none of us are perfect and anybody you're spending a lot of time with, you're going to rub your fucking wounds on each other. But a work environment is like great, I think, because the same thing will happen because you're around each other, but there's enough distance, like for most of us, there's enough distance, unless like you're really obsessed with your job, where like you could be like, fuck it, where you can like breathe enough and then practice the shit like, like I can't tell you, it hasn't happened in a while, but like, like the most MFF thing is when one of us sits down and I've had it done to me where it's like, there's the paper. Because now I'm going to say things to you. And I had to write it out because it's very hard for me to say these very difficult things to say. So if I see Mark with a piece of paper, that means this is something he doesn't want to say, but he knows he needs to. Yeah, because that's the other thing too that like I want to be accountable to. And listen, here's the other thing that I've come to understand is like this is the ultimate place where I have to have very like unrelenting standards for myself. And if I'm not clean with somebody, right? If I'm having feelings about a thing and I haven't addressed it with this person, that is I think that's just not how I want to be in the world. And for two reasons. Number one, part of what I think is probably accurate, and I'm denying them the opportunity to learn the way that they're impacting people around them that would be valuable for them to know, right? And obviously in a business setting, you'd also say I have a certain economic obligation as the owner of the business if this is negatively impacting myself, other team members, the clients, etc. Secondly, I'm invariably wrong with some of it, or there's some of it I do not know. So by holding it inside, this is what Ray Dalio refers as being like the weasel, right? If you read the book Principles in Bridgewater, they're like, and they take this like arguably like, actually, they might go too far with this, where like they record everything said in all the meetings. And if somebody's name is said, supposedly anywhere in the building, you're going to get like a memo of what was said about you. They're very extreme about it. But I get his take. And I trend towards this radical transparency where it is unethical because now I'm being judged, jury, and executioner of you. And I've made a decision about you. I've told a story about you. And I'm not going to say it to you, but inside, this is what I think about you. And I might even tell some other coworkers, or I might like let loose, and this is death is there. This is fucking death. I might like let loose a curt little comment about you to someone else. And now they're like, what's going on here? What's going on over there? And I will also say, I've come to understand that it's not, I don't think you can expect that 1,000% from every person that works with you. I think you have to be honest, there's a power dynamic there. There is an asymmetry. And when you're responsible for someone's performance, for their income, and also different people are wired differently. Like I am wired, in spite of, again, not being a pugnacious person, I do think, in part because it's so uncomfortable for me to feel that, I am wired to be direct about that and trend towards, I'm gonna have this conversation because it hurts to hold this inside, like not say this thing. But like, I'm like everybody else too, right? Like I definitely have, over the years, when I was younger, certainly been like really struggling, particularly if it was someone I was like very good friends with them, I'm also very upset about this like performance. And I know that like, you're going to super push back and you're going to fight me on this. And I just like, know you're wrong and I know I'm right. And at this point, I think that is another thing that's facilitated the improvement of my experience of it. I won't do it anymore. I'm always going to have the chat. And I got to say, this team, and again, I think we've maybe done it always better than on average, but I think overall, that is one of the things I'm proudest of right now, this particular iteration of this team is like, and also like, it's not that hard. You just get better at it. Like you just like say the thing, and you do it like once per week. Someone will say something, it's like, oh, it stings like a little bit, but you're right. So thanks for sharing that with me, know? So if you practice that, I think that is what like can also be helpful to do with your marriage and with like in your communities and with your friends. So that is part of why I think work can be a dojo that can increase society. That's like grandiose and that's said in a very grandiose way, but man, like I'll die on that hill. Like I believe like that's how work relationships can literally improve society so that we keep moving the ball forward so our children, our children's children live in a better world than we inherited.
Yeah, I'm such a big believer. The friend I want, the employee I want, the boss I want is someone who's, when I think of like, let me go ask Stu, he'll tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Right? Like I want that person. And I think when you reframe the idea of what being mean is or what you're being too critical or whatever like that, when you talk to people more about like, this is who you are. Because that's the origin of an insult. Like you're bad at accounting. Okay? No. Instead of like the spreadsheet you created.
Yes, here's the specific behavior I saw.
And that's the breakdown. When I like before a client will do PRs, like performance reviews, I'm like, cool. So what's the game plan for these 7 people? And they'll go through and I'm like, well, how would you pretend I'm Chad? Tell me right now. And I'm like, whoa, no. Let's reframe the way Chad is not bad at opening up the gym first thing in the morning, right? Chad is just less of an effective manager for you in the AM shifts. Like, and again, it's like, well, why do I have to sit here and think like, because like it or not, words can hurt some people's feelings.
100%.
I'm someone that you can call me whatever the fuck you want. It's not going to bother me. But I know that my end goal as a communicator, a leader, a boss, just to get the end result I want. And I know that I have to manipulate and tweak my words in order to get that with some people. And accepting that and be like, I used to be the hard ass, like, fuck that. I'm just going to tell you what's up. And if you can't handle it, fuck off, right? And then I realized I'm going to get so much more out of it. And it actually makes me I think I'm way better at leadership or negotiating or debating when I know which words to pull in strings because you're the way you are.
Even if you're being purely utilitarian and purely Machiavellian, it behooves one to understand, okay, what does this person need? Because I think that's what makes leadership so complicated is that is the thing also. I think it's taken me a long time to map onto general frameworks. Oh, this is what this person needs, right? The metaphor I've heard, which I think is so true, I think it's in Danny Meyer's Setting the Table, is like leadership is like a fire and it can warm, it can wound, it can bring light, and learning how to titrate, is that the word? Calibrate, to calibrate the messaging in a way the person can hear it. Because it is also true, one of my favorite books on this topic is a great book called Crucial Conversations, which is like a Bible for us here. And one of the premises of the book is that the great falsehood that most people buy into is I have to choose between silence because I'm afraid and I'm afraid of hurting the relationship, or violence. Like, I had to tell you that way. It's just, what did you want me to do? I had to give it to you, right? And that it is possible to be direct, but still kind. It's possible to be absolutely speak and focusing on here's what is true, here what I felt is true, the behavior I saw is true. I can even volunteer. The story I'm making you about is this. What I'm making it mean is this. What I suspect might be going on inside you is such. And then like, well, what do you fucking know? I don't know. I'm like openly, you tell me your side of the story. And I think that master skill of being candid without robbing the other person of their dignity and bringing your humility into it while still being completely direct about what's going on. I'm just like convinced like that is the master skill of being a human.
Yeah, you can take words and weaponize them, and every weapon can be used appropriately, or it could be Hiroshima. Like, it could be like,
and there's certainly a time and a place too where I think it's also, and I think this is more advanced stuff, which I've only recently come to be more comfortable with. And I think in part because like, not get like all for it, but because like, challenging family upbringings. And I have like truly violent temper. Like my temper is so bad. And it's only really been the past couple of years that I've like worked on learning how to, it is okay to express like the actual depth of my anger and even feel it in the moment and express it the way that I'm feeling, and do so in a way that is not going to actually irreparably harm the relationship, and that also trust that like this person can take it. Like maybe they're doing a bad job, right? Because there's a lot of research suggests like, listen, if you're blowing up your team all the time, that's not great, but there's something to be said for like, you can play that card once in a while, right? And I think there's both a utilitarian argument for that, that maybe feels maybe a little manipulative, but I also think there's something to be said for, again, modeling how to be a human that's like, I'm being a full me with you. Because that's the other thing too, like we had a meeting, earlier today with like some people on my sales team. I was like, okay, before you do anything, I just want to say, I'm feeling real ornery right now. I'm feeling real ornery. I'm feeling real edgy. There's a lot going on. I'm feeling real spicy, and I'm feeling real frustrated about things. And I just want to start with that because I really love being with you too. I'm excited for this meeting. You always give me energy. And I just want to start with that because if you're seeing me being a little cranky, I just want to like clear the air. Like that's where I'm at.
Elephant in the room that it's an elephant to you. They know.
They have no idea. Here's the thing. A lot of times I think they do know. And that's the thing. It's like hilarious is like, look, everybody, particularly as the leader, your behavior is loud, right? Everyone's like, they're like looking at like, and particularly for me, like I'm like hardly, poker face guy. So I've had to learn to just be like, and again, here's the thing. If I'm doing it like every week, okay, if every like, week or every like 2 weeks, I'm like, I just want to say today, I'm in a really bad mood. It's like, all right, well, then there's maybe something else going on. Yeah. But like, doing it every few months. And again, I have to give credit to this particular team where, we have such warm, both like professional collegiate relationships, but really supportive relationships where they've really supported me too by like, I think really feedbacking that's like helpful for them to like, I really appreciate you share that. But again, it's also like, I'm not doing it every like week. It's like once every like 6 months. Cause like, I'm also like pathologically happy all the time. I'm like one of those people just like, I won that genetic thing. Like, I'm that annoying guy. I'm like, it's pretty sunny most of the time inside my heart.
With the three things you've got MFF, Alloy, and then let's go probably MFF, Business Unicorns, Alloy in chronological order.
Yep.
We talked a lot about earlier about keeping things simple and doing one thing. And you've obviously these three things going on. You mentioned this Broadway fund as well. And I'm sure that's one of many brain children, but you've been aborting the shit up all those other brain children because you just know you can't take all of them on. The thing about brick and mortar is that at a certain point, again, commercial real estate withstanding, there is a point and it just happens. It's guaranteed on a long enough timeline. You literally have to fold due to someone else's decision to do something with this structure that you have embodied. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was like, well, okay, we could go somewhere else, but really would our clients move from here to the other side of Chelsea or whatever it may be, right? Yep. As you think of a decade from now, because you're only 13 years in, so like the longer you're into it, the longer you'll be like, 10 years from now, that's not a huge window anymore. Right. What does this look like? What do all three of them, like what is the status quo? What's in existence? What's not? Like 10 years from now, I don't have you thought that.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years is hard. Like, honestly.
Let's go 5.
Yeah, 5 years from now, I would love to. 5 years from now, I would love to be up to at least 7 or 8 alloys, or maybe already cruising past 10.
Have you purchased other territories other than the Northern Jersey?
We have not yet. We have not yet.
How many total do you know are in development?
I believe there's 120 or 130.
That's fast.
Yeah, they're
fast.
Rick knows what he's doing. He is a smart dude. And that too has been fun because I'll just say like briefly that another choice that was part of the calculus was knowing their emerging brand. Rick has the unique, I think, distinction of having previously licensed 2,500 alloys across all sorts of different businesses, literally all around the world, but it's still an emerging franchise, right? So, to take nothing away from his formidable skill set, there's going to be things that need to be learned along the way. So for me, that's part of the thing also interesting with an emerging franchisor. Optimally, I would contribute to the system's success. I would feel a lot of fulfillment if I can help offer things, and also I think the other thing about this too, that I really hope to be a great asset to Rick and Alloys, like I get the deal. Like I'm a franchisee. Like I'm not owed anything, right? I appreciate I have this awesome opportunity. I appreciate I get to run MFF and that they're comfortable with me, maybe opening up some other locations provided we stay in New York City. That's great, And related to that, talking about MFF. So MFF in 5 years, ideally we'd be up to like maybe 3-4 clubhouses, right? I think the future ones won't be this size. I think there'll be some sort of smaller footprinty thing. And then as far as business for unicorns,
would you franchise MFF, or would you? I mean, even on the smaller front, or are you going to corporately own those?
We wouldn't. I think I think they'd be corporately owned. I think there's a number of reasons for that. Not the least of which being is like I'm a franchisee, so there's non-competes there, and I wouldn't legally wouldn't be able to do that without getting out of Alloy, and I wouldn't want to do that because the other reason is I don't think this franchises without me killing the things I most love about it. Like it is part of its unscalability, its impracticality, its raunchiness, it's all of its things that I just don't, I'm not interested in franchising this business because of what would require for that. But I'd be very excited to make it, this like, kind of what it is already, but just like an interesting, now multiple footprints, sort of like hyper regional New York City, weird, quirky fitness brand that specifically helps the kind of person that I was doing shows with when I was like an actor that don't feel comfortable in traditional gym spaces and that know that like the people there are going to know what they're doing. They're only not going to make me feel shitty about myself, but they're going to make me feel like welcomed and cared for and like I belong there. And that is very, very satisfying. And I would like to do more of that. And then I think the one that's the biggest question mark is business for unicorns, just because, like I said, the short term right now is head down. I want to just blow the minds of these clients. I want to keep making the systems better. I think we can grow it to a point without, having to make it a very, very different business. And I think that is the thing that probably there's the least clarity on because, I just think we're just unsure. And I think there's pros and cons to both. And we have not yet decided. And I think we'll probably have more clarity once we grow the business a little bit further. I think we're going to get to a certain point and we'll either be like, okay, we're really happy with what this is and this is good. Because that business strange is the one that either I think is on the one hand is the most likely to actually be like, all right, we're just going to put this on a simmer and just nail this and just be great at what this is. Or the one that we're like, and now we're going to pull the lever. Now we're going to go to the moon. And that very much, I think, is part of the active conversation we are having.
I'm trying to remember the name of the franchise accelerator that Alloy partnered with. They've got a real clever little brandy kick to them. Rep, that's it. Yep. Yeah. And they've got their different divisions. Yep. Rep them, grow them, whatever. And that's, I'll get people like, look at me, hey, I want a franchise, and what's that like? And I've never personally franchised. I went about 40% of the way through the process, decided not to. That's when we went to the license model, and we did all that before retiring, quote unquote. But I tell people, the thing you have to accept once you go through this now, you now have to completely switch your mindset as a franchisor of your job, like your number one customer now you're selling a business. It's a B2B,
Yeah.
and your number one customer is the franchisee.
Yep.
And I love what, I watch Brandon. I'll be having whiskey and cigars with Brandon on a Tuesday, and he'll get a text and be like, yeah, I guess I'm going to fly up to Philly or one of my locations. They're having some issues, and we want to be extreme. We want them to know that we're there for them. I'm very similar, I'm sure, how Rick has been with you guys.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, too, that's got to change is you've got to realize I've got to be willing to let them lead, let them do their thing within the parameters of what I created.
Yeah.
And I'm only there to support them. I can't get in the way and fix things for them.
Yes.
But it is I always said whether it be a sauna house, a sweat house, some of these other, what would I franchise? What would I get into? Would it be marijuana? Would it be, what would I jump? And I would love, I love the idea of becoming a franchisee in something because at this stage of my life, I'm not trying to create things. I'm trying to execute.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, that was a lot of what draw to me. As in addition to knowing that there were certain skills that the franchise would fill in for me, it's again, because of my particular arrangement, again, it's hard to separate this. It's hard to separate, I think, anyone's strategies from them leveraging the opportunities they have, right? It's the other piece too. It's why there's no globally useful strategy because, for instance, real estate is an amazing strategy most of the time. And in spite of my entreaties to my landlord, they are thus uninterested in selling. Maybe that'll change. But at the same time, I had a set of really unique opportunities. And again, I'm not a proud person, but there's one thing I've done is every time I've had an opportunity, man, and because I had not only, this interest in Alloy and a relationship with Rick and a really amazing operating partner, my partner Greg on that project, that felt like the move. So yeah, franchising is super interesting too. And that your point is well taken. I think the thing that I'm also interested in it, and so far, so good. I think maybe because I did a lot of research really on the way this goes, because invariably the relationship has tensions, is because crudely, I'm not speaking about Alloy. Alloy is great right now, though, listen, some of this might show up with some of the people in the system, but crudely, every franchisee of every franchise business thinks, the franchisor doesn't understand how hard we're working. I'm just trying to do this thing just to they won't let me put in a such and such in here, and this would be such an obvious idea, and meanwhile, I have to run this dumb marketing thing they're doing, and it's bleeding me out of money, it's really hurting me. And then every franchisor is like, man, my franchisees don't get it, we're working so hard here at corporate, we're spending so much money to test this thing out, and then we just can't get them to run the play. And I think that is something that is just interesting to me because it's a unique relationship, right? Because they're not a client, they're not an employee, they're a partner, but it's just a weird dynamic. And, I know it's something that is very top line for Rick, and I'm sure for Brandon, anyone else doing that is, casting with the franchisee really matters. On the one hand, you want to grow, you have this opportunity, this is not a small thing to sell. Leads in that world, very expensive, but you are marrying this person. They're getting in with you for 10 years. And I'm certain that there are franchisors that have not done that well over the years and paid a horrible price financially and emotionally for bringing on the wrong people when they were looking to grow.
Or they fucked it up. Did you see that write-up on Exponential that came out last week? What happened to their stock price the second? It was a straight nosedive the second that hit the peak, and that's the thing is, you have F45 not giving out the right numbers, right? And there's going to be all kinds of repercussions there legally on those guys with their IPO status. But it's like employer and employee. I think you framed that up really well. One group thinks they're not doing enough for us, or they're not doing the right things. Then the franchisor or the employer thinks, well, they don't understand how much goes into this. And all I think is it's historic wins. And it's one thing, again, I'll even speak to Metabolic saying, when they've got a franchisee that's I'm asking forgiveness. I asked forgiveness, not permission. I did it this way and it really fucking worked. Look, okay. If you have a historic win, people listen. Just if you're bitching about the way the franchisor does things, but his marketing thing did fucking work and it made for your most profitable quarter yet, you shut the fuck up. Wins will take care of that. Yeah. But if there's never any wins, then yes, that's the issue, is that if I can't look up to you and be like, he's leading us down a crazy path again, but the last 3 times he led us down a crazy path, it fucking worked. And then people just start to be like, I'll follow you into hell. I'll do whatever.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. The other thing that seems interesting about franchises, which somewhat maps to the way an organizational scales, is when you move from a emerging brand to globe straddling behemoth, the bandwidth the organization has to absorb innovation from entrepreneurial franchisees starts to really change. It takes like a long time to do things. I think that was another thing that is exciting to me about Alloy right now is, and again, things are very dialed in. They're I think remarkably buttoned up because they're such a young brand because of their prior experience. But, again, I'm just really looking forward to opportunities to not only, hopefully feed things back up that hopefully, some of the other franchisees might find useful, but even the friendships you have with franchisees. So this is another thing too, that I was told by the consultant that I worked with, who's like one of the smartest business people I've ever worked. This guy was amazing. And
who's this? Can you name drop him?
What's that?
Can you name drop him?
Yeah, Rick Bizio. His name is Rick Bizio. If you're getting a franchise, I highly recommend. Tell him I sent you. Honestly, it's been amazing how much like I learned from business with this guy. And again, like I don't know about you, but I feel like every year I'm like doubling what I knew my entire career. And I'm like, how can this be happening? Like I knew a lot of stuff. How do I like in 1 year double what I knew previously? Now, again, I'm sure some of that's trick of the mind, but this is something I was like, this guy is a G. And one of the things I didn't properly appreciate is part of the benefit of being in a franchise system is the other franchisees, because it's not just like a coaching group where it's like, oh, we all have kind of similar businesses, but like, yeah, but you do class database. Oh, you do 4-on-1 semi-private. Oh, I do 6-on-1 small group. There's still plenty of things that are highly valuable. There's still, those businesses are enough peers, but the benefit of having the exact same literal model, the exact same, like everything means that the richness of those encounters, particularly, and Alloy has some killers. There are some killers in there, and it's been so fun to develop those relationships. In some cases, people I've actually known for years and years and years who also decided to do this. Because another thing I've observed about this moment in the fitness industry, you might know better than I, this feels new. This feels new in the past couple of years where sophisticated owner-operators are now sometimes doing a franchise as their next thing, right?
Sure.
Now, part of that is because there are a couple of brands, I think, that are willing to do that, right? Because once a brand reaches a certain size, the non-competes really stiffen up. And I think it's likely not going to be an opportunity forever, probably even for some of the brands that will allow it for now. And even then, it's also based much of the time on we have an existing relationship. But one of the things that's sort of fun about this moment in the industry as things have progressed, is even from 5 years ago, there's just like the rich have gotten a lot richer in the industry. The people that really know what they're doing are running even better businesses they're running. They've now really been running good businesses for a while. There are a lot of people that own gyms that have really built out capital and are getting into all sorts of different wealth building opportunities and again, maybe this was happening like 10 years ago when I opened up my gym and I just like didn't know of any, but I guess it's possible. It's entirely possible now that I'm thinking through that maybe just this information wasn't proliferated. But it just really strikes me that like the top, and again, it's not everybody, but the top handful % of gym owners seem to be doing better than I ever knew anybody was doing historically and are really getting some interesting shit.
Well, it's also, I think you look at I'm a history buff of the fitness industry. So when you look at like, what industry knowledge we had, it was the Globo Gym Health Club.
Yep.
The first iteration of the group class model was Curbs, which was the fastest fitness franchise to grow, and then just a spectacular, fucking Icarus type scenario. Yeah. So then you start seeing the rise, and you get, again, everyone gives CrossFit the credit to this. I give CrossFit, honestly, the 2008 crash, because the reason CrossFit gyms opened up as fast as they did, of course, there's a low barrier to entry, but it's because every one of them was able to go in 2008 and go to an industrial warehouse, and a landlord would give you 2 years for free if you signed a 5-year lease. Yeah. I mean, like, it was gangbusters.
It was actually the right time in many ways.
In industrial. None of them, and like being in retail posh spots wasn't really a thing then at that point for this group fitness model. So you see this growth, but that means that if group fitness, we'll call like Orange Theory the sophistication of group fitness in 2010-ish. I mean, we've got 15 years maybe of like good number. Like no one knows shit about fuck in this group fitness thing. We all live like some expertise in the way we did it. But I mean, that's it. It's just such a young thing. Like, where's the health clubs? Those have been reinventing what Lifetime is doing now.
100%.
I look at like the John Reed Fitnesses in LA and Dallas, like these really unique concepts. And then what I'm seeing a ton of are these boutique open gym 24/7, no staff.
Yep.
Opening up, incredible equipment, great lights for selfies, very Instagram friendly. I mean, I'm seeing those things and I'm just like, again, as soon as I feel like I know shit, the industry's still moving, and I just realized like none of us really know enough about all of this that's happening. Because if we did, Flywheel would still be around. Like there's so many big brands that have made such horrible decisions with all the MIT money behind, like all the smart people.
Yeah,
in the
smart
world.
people. Yeah, smart people.
Incredibly smart people. And so it's just like I sit here and I'm like, we look at like Alloy and I'm like, fuck, that makes so much sense. Like, why didn't anyone do that sooner or as well as Rick did it? And it's just because we haven't been doing this that long. We don't really know that much yet.
Yeah, no, it's definitely still a young industry in many ways. And of course, we're intersecting also with changes in consumer awareness of fitness and what people want to buy. And, here's the thing I've reflected on too that's sort of interesting about and I keep using this term. I don't mean this as a derogatory term because clearly you and I are part of it, but sort of the fitness business thought leader guru industrial complex is, again, there were definitely people doing this 5 years ago, but no one doing it at the scale that people are doing it now, right?
They had to rent out a ballroom at the Marriott and sell a DVD.
Yeah, it was a different game. It was a different game, right? And even like gym launch, my understanding is really blew it outside the gate that first year, and then for the actual coaching group, or are maybe not going to ever touch that again, right? They, which again, take nothing away, incredible. It's still a huge business. Good on you. But the other thing that's interesting is the opportunity to do that is so different now because there's so much marketing for it that to some extent, the one thing that anybody doing fitness business marketing content is marketing is, well, you got to get a coach. So basically everybody's marketing for everybody else that this is a thing you need to get. And that's a uniform across every single person that's doing it, which is allowing individuals more and more to choose the person based on their, subjective assessment of how good the content is, or how credible do I find them? And to some extent, do I vibe with this person and this brand, right? So that's, I think, maybe a perverse way of saying it to some extent. And oftentimes, people are marketing for other people. The consumers go elsewhere in the way a lot of fitness content does too. It's a similar phenomenon, right? You're educating the consumer base, but that's created a consumer base.
It wasn't
even there, right? So if the total addressable market, who knows? But let's say independent gym owners is 30,000. Well, 5 years ago, how many of them were getting any coaching?
It's like CP. I remember in 2012, 13, 14, 15, I had to beat you over the head to get you to hire a CPA.
Right.
QuickBooks, bro.
Now
that's, if I were to meet someone who doesn't have a CPA, that's silly now. But to hire a consultant or whatever, I'm like, do you realize every top brand, I don't care, Chipotle, I don't care what you fuck with, brings in consultants of all special types, left and right, day in and day out. These are just things that, again, we're getting more exposure to it. Also, the business acumen is because of free videos and content that people put out. Less idiots like me. I was one of these people when I opened up and, when I got into it, the only backing I had is I had this incredible education in the Globo Gym and experience doing some high level shit there that allowed me to come in and just, I have no problem saying this. I kicked the shit out of all these little CrossFit gym operators that were in Charlotte. They couldn't hold a candle to my business IQ. Now, the business IQ, when I talk to nobody who's as dumb as maybe I was way back in the day is going to be able to stand up a gym, mom and pop, self-funded, bootstrapped in 2023. The days of starting with a boot camp outside and then making it into something it's harder. It's much harder. There's too much refined, sophisticated, smart money in the system. So for you to compete with it, it's but if they're not willing to work as hard, I'm like, that's not the issue anymore. It's not hard work. That's no longer the variable. It's smart work. That's the fucking variable. And if you you work 16, I work 16. You work smarter than me, you are going to surpass me in a fucking heartbeat. And more information is out there now.
It really is. Like I said, even for me, somebody who was always an education junkie, that's part of why I think I've learned so much more in the past, let's call it even 4 years. And again, I was always an education junkie, but I was going to conferences. And that was great. And I would learn things at conferences, and I would go to fitness business conference events when they had them. But other than that, I was reading a lot of business books and reading a lot of general stuff. And that shit doesn't always translate, right? And the other thing too that is interesting I've observed about this current inflection point for me is there's just not a lot of information about $3 million to $30 million businesses, because most of it is for under 1 million trying to get to $1 million, or it's a consultant who sells to, Fortune 500 companies, 50 million, 100 million. And there are principles that are broadly applicable. I'm certainly not suggesting they aren't. And I'm certainly not suggesting I didn't get a lot out of that period. But there was a long period where I didn't have a lot of fitness business concept to consume. And, starting about 4 years ago, that really started to change with the advent of all the podcasts, the YouTube channels, the people getting serious about fitness, business, email marketing. And, the hope, of course, is that this is a rising tide that's going to raise all boats. Certainly in certain markets, there's more competition to be successful because people are savvy with the business piece. But this is maybe overly generous, overly wishful thinking, but I don't know. If we're trying to help people, it's probably good if people know how to run a business, because you can't, and this is like an old saw, but you can't help your clients if you're broke, and you're stressed all the time, and you can't make cool opportunities for your team, even if it's not a long-term career trajectory. At least they've got a cool job for a while that's fun, that they feel good, and they're cool with their parents. So, again, I'm, maybe optimistic to a fault at times, I concede, but, I can't help but think my hope is, as an industry, we're going to do a better job helping people, and it's obviously, again, this is precluded on assuming that the individuals getting good at marketing and sales are now not displacing training information. Because if I have any concern, that is maybe a modest concern, is this next generation of gym owners are going to get way better at making money faster and are not actually going to be as good at training or behavior change or such and such. Because the thing is, when we were coming up, that was the only thing to learn. So most of my professional education was training, because I didn't
no business
I couldn't even find other things to learn about, right? Yeah. So I had no choice. Whereas now, for better or for worse, 25-year-old gym owner McGee, is they kind of know how to coach a squat. But they've never heard of Mark Ripito. They don't know who a great cook is. They've never heard of great cook. They don't have, they maybe have some random fly-by-night cert, but they've got real good at doing Facebook ads real quick, and they've really focused on high-pressure, high-ticket sales. So, again, ever the optimist, hope springs eternal. My hope is that that's not going to be the case, that we're just actually going to get better as an industry, but I can't be wrong.
I feel the cash trickles down. It's like tip of the spear. If more of us get in here with good business acumen and build good businesses are the only things that pay good money. And the reason you and me could talk to 117-year-olds and none of them want to be a professional coach is because there's not enough money in it. Tomorrow I go out to Sean Pastuch owns Active Life out in Long Beach, and his big thing is professionalizing the coach and getting these guys to where it's doctor, lawyer, physical therapist, fitness coach, all on the same thing, right? Because until you professionalize that group, it's only going to become something you do for a moment in your time. Yeah, whereas a lawyer, lawyers don't have businesses, they have jobs. You stop billing, you stop making money. Right?
Totally.
You open a firm or whatever, become a partner or whatever, but still, same thing with the doctors. You're not doing open heart surgery on the baby or whatever it is you do. You're not making money. These are they're literally very well paid hourly, personal, kind of things. Fitness coaches have to get to that degree, or else there will never be the talent uprising. There's someone right now that's probably going to med school that would actually be an incredible strength and conditioning coach that might actually come up with a fucking model of training that make all of our fucking faces melt. But he went to med school because the money's not in training.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I have to say that is one thing that, I don't know, Sean, I love his mission. I wish him all the best. I haven't yet seen how the business model actually works to do that. I also think it's going to take, and I think if it happens, it's going to take a long time too, because there is still a stigma, right? Because this is part of the flight to gym ownership, is it just feels like the next thing. And it's you can now be at least a small business owner over the holidays. But when you're a trainer and you're, 28 and you're working 15 hours a day and you're, making 80 grand, you feel pretty good when you go home and you're who cares? It's fuck you, Uncle Jimmy, I'm a trainer, right? You're 42, you're working 16 hours a day. You're making even 80 grand a year. The kid, the wife don't see you. You're having trouble getting for a mortgage because your income looks kind of erratic. There is a social stigma for on the floor coaches. And of course, there's always outliers or individuals that, can do it for their career, and that's amazing. And we really benefit from that kind of person. But I think that's a piece of it too. And not dissimilar to, and this is, I think probably an argument to, we probably need to revisit this, because while taking nothing away from a bartender, that's almost a similar phenomenon, right? The bartender, you're the king of the world, you're 28, you're single, you're dating, you're Tom Cruise, you're 42, and now you're making a third of the money working 60 hours a week, because now at least you can be the manager, even though you don't see your kids and you're miserable, because there is this social status that is a part of that equation that, and this perhaps because of the industry's infancy, but I think that is a confounding factor right now on this goal of...
I'm going to spend the rest of the month in Ireland in July. So I'll be in Ireland hanging out. I mean, bartenders, that's a full career position. Like, it's also the culture of it. It's like tradesmen here. That's your dad's a carpenter. Like that's a low performance thing, It's so, you're right. It's very funny how we classify professions. Like I know a couple guys that are technically carpenters that make incredible but they do 39 pieces a year for the wealthiest 1% in North Carolina, right? Like, it's just kind of where you take the thing. You could be like Mark Ripito will continue to coach people. If Louis was still around, like, those guys can charge $500 an hour for their time.
Same thing with celebrity personal trainers, right? Celebrity personal trainers can do it sort of indefinitely, and obviously lifestyle is a piece. You're trading dollars per hour, which you may or may not want to do. I don't think that's wrong. It's clearly not the path that you and I have chosen, but I get it. And for the rank and file that are, in theory, doing the vast majority of the work of the industry writ large. And to be honest, even that I've softened a little as I've gotten older. I mean, I certainly was the guy that was like kind of a dick when I was younger, because I read every book. I read every book. I read every book. I read every blog, and I was like, these trainers suck. They know what they're doing, And that, I have to say, I've softened like a little bit. I've come around to, in part because like my understanding, and part of my own mission is like, I'm actually not looking for athletic performance. I'm looking to make it to live a little bit longer, to delay your Alzheimer's. Like, I want your brain to function better. I want you to be nice to your kids. And the dose response of just minimal amounts of movement is so profound that I've become so much more agnostic about, if you're not like hurting them, if you're not doing anything that's orthopedically injurious, and they like what you're doing enough and they're moving around, fucking get on with Zumba. Use Zumba. We are on the team. I want you winning. I'm about more people going from doing nothing to doing something. And that's always been my bailiwick, more than seeking the rarefied, errors of elite sports performance.
And this is why I argue, with Sean or whatever, I don't think it's going to be easy to professionalize the coach, because guess what? We don't need you to be an elite athlete. We just need you to get up and move around and all this stuff. That is not an expensive of enough pain point. However, go back to a lawyer. When you need a lawyer, you need a fucking lawyer. When you need a doctor, you need a fucking doctor. The pain point for what fitness is for the average person is not high enough. You know who it is for? Someone going to the Olympics. Right? Like, if you make your fucking, the guys that are training, the guys on the PGA Tour, that's different. But for this general, the 80% of the population, I just don't see the pain point as great enough to scale it to the point where we will have coaches at the same level of doctors, because the problems you solve aren't that big.
And precisely it. And it doesn't quite require that skill set. And again, this is not to be dismissive of coaches. I am the last person to say that one shouldn't have that. I think professional competence is a matter of character and integrity and a requirement. But it is to say that, to understand program design and technical coaching for the general population, for healthy, uninjured individuals that move well enough, I don't think that is something that requires decades of intensive training. And not only that, but we all know the interpersonal piece is just always going to be a big piece of this, to the chagrin of a certain type of personality that really values the details and values professional competency above all else. In practice, it's like all the research about malpractice insurance, right? It's like, you can be a doctor and fucking kill people, but if I like you, yeah, you killed my mom. So be it, right? But like, if you're like a dick and like there was like, well, this medication you gave had this one mild thing, I'm taking your fucking house, right? And that is very consistent. And training, that is another piece of it as well, which is part of like another one of my, I guess my like hobby horses that I really want to continue to advocate for this industry is going back over the leadership thing, like working on oneself. Even though I said I'm personally maybe not the best person, the one-on-one coaching kind of thing, but learning how do I connect with people in a meaningful way? How do I facilitate behavior change? How do I understand human psychology? Like that's so much of the game. Even when you hire a coach, this is something that like I think is like often hard to clock, and it can be hard to hire for. You're really looking for someone that can make a wide variety of people feel comfortable with themselves very quickly and have enough of a veneer of competence that they establish some level of authority of what they're talking about. And if you establish lots of authority, but people just don't want to be around you, like, I don't know, it's like the old Mike Boyle joke. He's like, oh yeah, you're a great trainer, you have a lot of clients. Are you an asshole? Are you a dickhead? Maybe you might be a fucking asshole. That might be the problem. Like, well, and admittedly, that's also hard to teach, right? So I can see there's room for everybody. We also need the rocket scientists that maybe they're just going to go in the room and write the programs. Like, I think we all hopefully can contribute to this. But I do think the interpersonal piece is a prominent part of the tapestry that needs to be as prominent as I think the technical proficiency of design and technical coaching.
I've compared exactly what you've said. My ex-wife had she still has a very successful salon in Charlotte. And I take that same model and I look at the salon industry. I would just sit there, I would watch, and I knew the money that was happening, and I had counted the chairs. I knew how much every girl paid, and I watched them, like, the difference here, instant gratification. I come in and drop $500. I'm Brazilian, blah, blah, blah. I instantly look better. But it's exactly the same thing. Here's the thing too, is the reason with fitness, I don't think we'll ever get there. You can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
Fitness you can do yourself. Yeah. And that's the thing is craft beer got really big and craft coffee got really big in the past 15 years. Now people are what I call like the smart customer, but they're actually fucking dumb. Like they don't get it, but they're a connoisseur. They're a snob. Like I like whiskey. So I sit here, I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 or this. So like, and I really don't know shit about fuck, right? I don't really know stuff about whiskey. I think because I drink it a lot, I know. That's clients. At some point they say, I don't need the recipe you gave me. I know how to squat and burpee and press and pull and lunge and all that and hinge. I'm going to go and do it on my own. Those other industries we talked about, the salon being one, the chiropractor being another, you can't do it on your own. That's the other thing. Like if you look at all the different components that
no one cuts their own hair.
It'll be so hard for the professionalized coach. And I want it to happen so bad. That's why I think I went after gym owners because I know I can get gym owners to financial success. I never in my head was able to, that's why I wanted to become a gym owner. Because I love training, man. I was a coach through and through. But I just never saw the need for it being so high that it can make the amount of money I wanted.
Yeah, and I think that, ultimately there's also, I have space for, there's a certain type of person that they're cool just to make like a good living and have a good job helping people. But I think it's also okay. Like the best I've sort of gone to is it being also okay. This is a transient thing and you're going to be here for a couple of years and then you're going to go on to your next thing. And that's going to be a great next thing. And I am certainly comfortable with that. I'm also have learned to be very direct with people about this. Like my expectation is you're going to be here for a couple of years. And in most scenarios, you're going to move on and you'll be better at life because of this. And I'll be so proud of you. And then in the unlikely event that you buck those trends, stick around for a long, long time and it's mutually beneficial, that's amazing. But yeah, I think like I haven't yet figured out in these models how, if that is important to someone, like really build wealth as the employee. I don't think that anyone's figured that out yet, but we can still, I think, contribute to that, even if it just means the relationship is going to be a little bit more transient in nature. And, hopefully this is happening now. Like now it's like fun as like former employees become Unicorn Society members running their gyms. That feels real special in my heart.
That's again, goes back to the first thing. It's just, we haven't been doing it long enough. There are people that just do hair that make $350 a year. Right? There are lawyers and doctors and fucking dentists that are making whatever because all those things have been done for fucking years. This thing is still just new and someone is knocking on the door and maybe it's a Sean Pastuch, maybe it's Alloy, whatever it is. And I'm excited for that. The last thing I want to do, the biggest thing on your brand, you were inclusive before inclusive was cool.
Sure.
It wasn't a marketing ploy. No. It wasn't, you didn't feel pressure from Twitter to do it, whatever it is. But the biggest thing I get asked, just checking DMs before I came in here, if someone wants to create a unicorn, I'm not being punny, but a unicorn brand like yours, what is your recommendation for someone who wants to create something that's in the white space, right? Like I mean, nobody was servicing theater actors and that unrepresented group of people. Nobody was doing that, and you did. And people think, again, I always be like, but Mark's not gay. I'm like, no, but it doesn't make him predatory either. Don't be like this straight dude who's like, man, I'm going to do all this thing.
Right, because
you saw an underserviced population that you were close to professionally. Yeah. And you also were a trainer. It was a perfect triangulation. Perfect storm. But for someone who wants to create something new or work with a clientele that is unrepresented, like someone here is thinking like, why is no one working with rehabilitated ex-cons? I don't know. Con body maybe. But
he's hiring him.
What advice do you have for someone who wants to chase that white rabbit?
Yeah, I mean, it's such like a cop-out answer, I think, in many ways, because listen, there was a lot of like luck, right? Like this type of thing. It's like Lollapalooza effects. It's like I did almost everything right, and I got real lucky, right? And that's how we, I think, hit the grand slam that we did. Because honestly, it's nothing more than like, I think first of all, I knew myself really well, and I knew what I liked, and I knew who I wanted to be, and I just like loved my people. Like I just loved, like this place is like a love letter to a very specific kind of person that I just loved so much. I want to make them like a thing. And it's such a cheesy answer, but like that's it. And I got lucky because that person there was an opportunity for them they wanted this kind of thing. They were in the area. And that's not always the case, because you might love a certain client that has a lot of other solutions. But for me, it was like, these were my friends. Like these were like the other theater kids, right? I always say it's like, if you ate lunch alone in middle school, like if you went and ate in the bathroom stall, like you'll understand this place. And that's a little bit of a canard, because I think most of us actually can relate to that, at least to some extent. But, particularly at the time, the New York City fitness industry, and still to this point, was like elite and exclusive. And that's all cool. And I love beautiful people. And I want beautiful people to go in beautiful spaces. And we got beautiful ninjas here too. And I think this place is beautiful. But it was like my friends, like my people that I knew like their life would be better. And I knew they were hurting in ways by not having fitness. I knew they wanted things that they weren't able to have, and just wanting them to be taken care of with the information from my mentors, who I knew were not going to be like the ones like they, and again, I love Mike Boyle. I don't think they would respond well to Mike Boyle. The Mike Boyle's amazing, and I was like, oh, how do I take this and give it to them? And that has been what this has been and how I've attempted. And I think to the extent that they can do that, it might be a different level of success, candidly, if it's a market that's already been taken care of. And you do have to be reasonable and say like, okay, well, if I love NFL players, there aren't a lot of them here in my rural market. But I think just getting clear on who you love and just focusing on how, this is the stupidest like business pyramid, but like it's what I got. It's like, I just love the hell out of them, focus on them all the time, and make the thing for them, make them your love letter.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Fisher. Thank you, brother. Thank you, dude.
Pleasure.